The Houston Community College Board of Trustees meeting will begin soon. Please wait. The Houston Community College Board of Trustees meeting will begin soon. Please wait.
2024 will now come to order at
1:33 p.m.
This meeting was called for the purposes listed on the duly posted meeting notice. The other committee members are Trustees Charlene Johnson and Dave Wilson, and alternate Dr. Cynthia Lentengary. A citizen desiring to hear before the Board of Trustees shall complete the hearing of citizen form 24 hours prior to the meeting and file said application with the Board Services Office. There are no citizens signed up to speak before the Academic and Student Affairs Committee today. We will begin with item A, Academic Instructional Support Update. This is a report item. No action is required. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to the status of academic instructional support and student responses to services provided. There will be a focus on the digital access centers as well. So with your permission, Mr. Chair, I invite Dr. Jerome Drain, President of the Online College and of the Center of Excellence in Academics, to come forward to the podium to present the item. Dr. Drain.
Thank you, Chancellor. Good afternoon, Church Even, trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today and highlight the invaluable opportunities of our instructional services units in ensuring the academic success of our students. In this presentation, I will provide an update on library services, tutoring services, and the newly established digital access centers. Before I proceed, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the dedication and hard work of Mick Stafford, the Executive Director of the Libraries, and his team, as well as Amanda Guerrero and her team from Tutoring Services. Please stand to be recognized. Their commitment has been instrumental in providing our students with essential resources and support, including library instruction, virtual and face-to-face tutoring, and efforts to bridge the digital divide. In the report you have received, you will find both quantitative and qualitative data outlining the impact of these academic interventions. While I won't delve deep into every slide, I will highlight key points and remain available to address any questions you may have at the end of this presentation. For our first slide, our library usage, as evidenced by gate counts. These are gate counts in our libraries. The counts have remained steady over the last 2 years, and we anticipate similar student usage for 2024. When comparing data from the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System, or IPEDS, HCC libraries demonstrate favorable performance compared to peer institutions. So what you see on this slide are our FTEs for the number of students that we have at the community college. This is actually 2021-2022 data. We will now submit for the next upcoming year, so this data is always a year behind. But this data allows for us to compare it directly with our sister or peer institutions. In addition to quantitative metrics, it's crucial to consider student feedback. To this end, our libraries utilize a combination of internal surveys and the Community College Survey of Student Engagement, or CESE, to gauge satisfaction of usage of our resources. Feedback consistently indicates that students value the support provided by library staff and resources in fulfilling their academic assignments. So moving on to tutoring. Our tutoring services have been integral in providing academic support to our students. We have successfully transitioned to offer both virtual and face-to-face tutoring sessions to accommodate a diverse student need. Expanding tutoring hours and automated the collection of student tutoring data through newly created dashboards. Data from our tutoring centers, and we have tutoring centers at 15 district locations all across our service area. And we also have virtual options for our students as well. So if students need tutoring, they can get tutoring. and we are very, very willing and able to help them with their tutoring needs. So data from our tutoring centers indicate a steady increase in utilization over the past year, underscoring the importance of these services in supporting student success. We've also implemented innovative strategies such as online scheduling platforms and expanded subject coverage to enhance accessibility and effectiveness in all locations across the district. Our tutoring services have seen a remarkable increase in utilization, particularly in the areas of mathematics, English, chemistry, and developmental math. By providing personalized support and innovative tutoring strategies, we're empowering students to excel in their coursework. Our student feedback, it remains overwhelmingly positive regarding the impact of tutoring on their academic performance. Through surveys and testimonials, students consistently express appreciation for the personalized assistance and guidance received from our dedicated tutors. The establishment of the Digital Access Centers represents our commitment to bridging the digital divide and ensuring equitable access to technology resources for all students. These 10 centers are spread throughout the district and provide students with a central hub to have their digital access questions answered, provide study rooms, and laptop checkout is available. We've been busy promoting the Digital Access Centers through social media and other HCC avenues. These efforts have proven invaluable as students are utilizing the spaces and services provided. The centers have constant student traffic, as indicated in the number of visitors. So this slide shows the hours. Our locations are open Monday through Friday. Many of those are open on Saturday, and not yet on Sundays are we open, but we have plans for that in the future. The centers have constant student traffic, as indicated in the number of visitors to our centers, and the center utilization is increasing every day as the centers are discovered by new students. So once again, in these spaces, our visitors to the Digital Access Centers, they're able to study. That's what we're seeing, the usage of these centers. There's lots of opportunities for our students to utilize the study rooms, so they're congregating together exactly like we want them to congregate to work. They're also checking out laptops. So at all of our centers, there are 15 laptops that are made available for students to check out. So they're checking out the laptops, as well as various tutoring sessions are in some of the Digital Access Centers as well. The data that I'm showing you is just from January 2nd up to middle of February. So we're really excited about the usage of those centers for our students. There are some observations. So in terms of the qualitative aspect of the Digital Access Centers, most students are interested in getting assistance. They're getting assistance for their Canvas courses. That's exactly what we wanted these centers to be used for. They have questions about how do they add money to print. They're doing printing in these centers. So these centers are being used, and we're extremely excited about that. We also see that students are using these centers to actually take their online classes. So once again, what we endeavored and programmed for, students are benefiting from the centers. And lastly, I'll talk about the AT&T partnerships. So we are extremely excited about the partnership with AT&T. We have a grant that we've written with AT&T, and that grant allows for us to reach the community members that need more information about technology basics. So we have workshops that are programmed at these Digital Access Centers. Some of those are past. We have one coming up this Saturday at A-Leaf Hayes, and you see those on the screen. But once again, we're really excited about the opportunity to interface with our community members in terms of introduction to technology basics. So these are the types of things that we're covering in the programming for the technology basics course, really geared towards our community members. We've had about 15 or so community members actually go through this training, and it has been extremely rewarding for them. So we're just really excited about the opportunities of our digital access centers with the partnership with AT&T. So in terms of next steps, we will continue to promote and conduct digital literacy workshops because we see the importance of those workshops for those individuals that attend. And as you might surmise, many of those are our senior members of the community, that they're able to go there and learn about video conferencing, so they're able to conference with their loved ones. So it's just great for them to have that aha moment. So we're really excited about that. So we will continue that programming. We will evaluate the usage data and consider extending digital access center hours. So when we initially began the programming for the digital access centers, we made the timing align as much as we could with the libraries or the tutoring facilities. We may need to expand some of those hours going forward, depending on the usage of those spaces. We will also expand the digital access centers to offer more tutoring, more library services, so students that, if they do have a specific library service question, we will be able to provide them the answer right in these centers. So we want to make this a one-stop shop in terms of having technology available to our students, as well as any tutoring or library type services that they need. We will establish an annual professional development conference for the academic success center staff. This really comes from our tutoring. We have the academic success center, but what we've learned through this programming is that these individuals, they need to understand the types of questions that are being asked at these digital access centers. So we're looking to expand that through a professional development opportunity for them. And of course, in terms of our library resources and tutoring, as the baccalaureate programs come on board, we will expand those offerings as well, expand for those offerings as well. And then, as always, as we think about continuous improvement, we review the survey results that we get, because we do recognize the value of hearing student voice in the programming that we offer, and we want to be nimble and make sure that we are addressing their needs. Thank you, and at this time, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
I have a question. On the library, are these physical libraries where books, or is it all digital as well?
No, we do have physical spaces around the district. So the data that I showed are from those physical spaces that we have.
Okay, because I saw that the Acres Home in North Forest had like 0 to 1, but so those are physical libraries?
We have those. Are you asking, does Acres Homes have a library? No, they don't have a physical library, but they have resources that students that are at Acres Home can benefit from.
Okay, because I didn't think I saw one there. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I've got one on tutoring, and it's great to hear all the good progress and effort put into expanding tutoring access. I'm curious, do we have any data that connects students that have been identified or recommended for additional tutoring with the fact that they're going and taking it and it's improving their outlook for completion?
We do. So we are starting to track that much more closely, and that happens through the dashboard. So I made mention of the dashboard, and the dashboard that was created by our tutoring director, Amanda Guillermo, does exactly what you're suggesting. So faculty are able to recommend students to go to tutoring, and then going to the dashboard, they're able to discern how that, by them going to tutoring, how it has impacted their grades.
Perfect, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question about the library again. So you're saying if they don't have the physical library, which I haven't seen the physical library, they have digital access to the library?
Yes.
And then they have the space to access the library at the campus?
So any of the labs, they can go into a computer lab there, and they can go to the library webpage, and there you can ask a librarian their own chat, as well as tutoring. It's the same way. So the tutors are, they can be virtual, so they do have that access to library resources as well as tutoring resources.
And they are being made aware of those resources?
They should be being made aware, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move to item B, update on state and national benchmarks. This is also a report item. No action is required. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to HCC's performance relative to state and national benchmarks. And so with your permission, Mr. Chair, I invite Dr. Norma Perez and Dr. Andrea Burridge to come to the podium to present the item. Dr. Perez? Dr.
Thank you, Chancellor. Good afternoon, Chair Shevin and trustees. The next presentation is going to focus on the benchmarks data that consist of comparing HCC's performance to that of our peers in Texas and nationally. It will cover data including our student population, enrollment, retention, completion, and transfer. With your permission, I will ask my colleague, Dr. Andrea Bullridge, to present the data, and I will return to talk about what we are doing to ensure we meet or surpass our benchmarks and become much more competitive. Dr. Bullridge.
Thank you. First, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Christopher Burnett for his work on this benchmarking data. He was not able to attend to present today. Since you've had a chance to read through this presentation, I'm going to summarize some of the highlights in the data slides and then turn the presentation back to Dr. Perez. Benchmarking data for HCC originates from two sources. The first is the National Center for Education Statistics Integrated Post-Secondary Data System Collection. This is referred to IPEDS, and it's a system of 12 interrelated surveys conducted annually by the U.S. Department of Education. IPEDS gathers data from every college, university, technical, and vocational institute that participates in the federal student financial aid programs, and it requires institutions to report data on enrollment, completion, graduation rates, faculty, staff, finances, institutional prices, and student financial aid. These data are made available to students and parents through the College Navigator College Search website and to researchers and others through the IPEDS Data Center. So this national source of data impacts how the community view HCC. The second source is the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. The state of Texas law mandates that colleges and universities submit a series of reports to them on a semester or annual basis, depending on the report. The reports are used for formula funding and to assess the state of higher education in Texas. They impact how our peers in the state of Texas think about us. So I'm going to start with enrollment. This first slide examines HCC relative to national peers, and thus you see IPEDS survey. It's evident that the majority of schools had a pandemic-related decline around 2021-2022. But for HCC, you can see that it's evident that our enrollment decline began sooner and was more prolonged than other peer institutions, with the exception of Miami-Dade. The next slide is a state view. One thing about these sources is the available years sometimes differ by source. So this slide goes from 2014, but the data is available through 2023. There you can see the same decline that you saw on the national slide. Relative to our peers, HCC's, you can also see that HCC's decline was more severe, especially during the pandemic. But you can also see from 2022 through 2023, the beginnings of a recovery. So, and when we look at the pandemic recovery, HCC's pandemic enrollment decline was especially severe, but our recovery is in the upper half of the large Texas institutions. Looking at the coordinating board's preliminary fall enrollment report, our increase in enrollment in that that period is not at the top of the Texas colleges, but it is in the upper half, which shows that we have begun to reverse those extreme declines. Okay, and when we look at benchmarks, it's important to consider student characteristics, because student characteristics help us understand what kind of supports our students might need. Two that we look at that are also considered in our performance-based funding through House Bill 8 are our students receiving Pell. And you can see that HCC is at the top of the large Texas institutions in the percentage of students who receive Pell. This suggests that we serve a particularly economically disadvantaged group of students, and that's been shown in other reports as well, for example, in the New York Times. We also serve a very high percentage of adult students relative to our peers. One of the trends you can see across all of the Texas community colleges, and this is one of the reasons that we benchmark, is that all of these colleges are losing students who are over 25. This is one of the reasons that that particular incentive is embedded in House Bill 8. The state of Texas recognizes the importance of community colleges serving this age group and wants to incentivize colleges to do exactly that. Okay, our next section is on completion rates. Our 3-year completion rates are at the bottom of the large Texas community colleges for our full-time students. There are a couple of reasons for this. One of them is our retention of students, which we'll get to in a few slides. Another one is that our students are very often part-time students even when they start full-time. Full-time refers to their first semester. Our full-time students very often turn into part-time students on semester 2, 3, and 4. And so they have difficulty earning. To graduate in 2 years, you must earn 30 credit hours per year with an associate's, or 15 per term. Our students typically do not have that amount of enrollment because they are working jobs and they have families. And so it typically does take our students longer to complete. You can see that our part-time numbers, while when compared to other part-time students in other institutions, are slightly better, still we would rather be in the top half of the distribution, but you can see the difference between full-time and part-time. We do better in our 6-year rates. Our 6-year rates were in the middle or in the top half for graduation. One thing about the coordinating board that is different from how we calculate our own graduation rates and how IPEDS calculates graduation rates is a coordinating board calculates a start here, go anywhere type of rate. So the rate is actually you started at HCC and did you get a degree anywhere at a public institution in the state of Texas. So one reason that we do relatively well in our 6-year rates, you'll see in a couple slides, is we are a very strong transfer institution. So many of our students who never received that associate's successfully transfer to a 4-year institution and receive their associates. And that's one of the reasons that we move from the bottom to the middle when we look at the difference between a 3-year and a 6-year rate. Okay, so degrees awarded. One of the places that HCC is faring well relative to its peers is an associate's awarded in technical or workforce fields. This again is the national data, and you can see that HCC has had in the gold has had a strong increase in the number of workforce associates. We are second in our large peers, even those with greater enrollment. We also are doing well relative to the state of Texas. The state of Texas has really valued those workforce associates, and so you see the schools much closer together here than you did in the national picture. And again, that's one of the benefits of looking at national and state benchmarks. You can see that HCC has held its ground and is in the top half for technical associates awarded. And the percentage of associates that are technical has been increasing at HCC. Now that is because one place that we've struggled is in the number of academic associates that are awarded. This again is the IPEDS national data, And from 2016 through 2022, there's a steep decline in the number of academic associates that HCC has awarded. This pattern is specific to HCC, and so it definitely shows a place that we are different from our peers. This is the Texas view, and you can see a similar, again, it's a different set of years because of what is available, but you can see a similar pattern when we compare to Texas. There are other institutions that are flat, but our decline is different from the kind of pattern in academic associates that has occurred elsewhere in the state. Okay, retention and transfer. Here are the slides I promised. So one of the things about benchmarking data is we would honestly love it if everything was given to us in the same way. That does not happen. And the other thing is that data is duplicated in interesting ways. So when you average things together, you actually don't get the correct answer, the overall number. And for that reason, we often present things in the way that the accrediting bodies report them back to us. There are three sets of bars here. The first set of bars are the San Antonio colleges, and you can see for the Alamo colleges, the retention rates at their colleges range from 69 to 77%. At the Lone Star colleges, they range from 59 to 72%. The rest of the institutions report their retention rates as a system, even when they are individual colleges. And you can see that HCC is at the bottom of this group. So our fall-to-fall retention rate is lower than our peers. Interestingly, we overlap with some of the Lone Star colleges, particularly those that are near us. And so there's a question here about what's happening demographically in the communities, what kind of programs we need to offer, and how to improve that retention rate. Note too that the most recent data available for retention is from fall 2021 through fall 2022. We have not seen the fall 2023 data yet. It hasn't been released since it's only April. So, and here's where HCC really does well, is in our transfer rates. You can see that HCC is near the top of large community colleges in its transfer rates. We're a strong institution with good ties and articulation agreements with our four-year peers, and as such, we typically are in that upper group of transfer institutions. And as I mentioned before, that is one of the reasons that our six-year graduation rates look so good, is because we are preparing students to go to those institutions, and they're getting degrees when they go to those institutions. And that is the difference between that 3-year and that 6-year rate. And with that, I will turn it back over to Dr. Perez.
Thank you, Andrea. So as you can see from the data, we've also done our research in terms of best practices using the data, as well as data from the Aspen Institute, from the Community Colleges Research Center, our Texas Pathways Institute, as well as the successes of colleges that have been recognized in Texas by the Aspen Institute. And so looking at all of these, the data, the benchmarks, so some of the things that we have done, that initiatives that we are following up with are to address enrollment. We are developing a strategic enrollment management plan, working with all 7 colleges based on community demands, as well as the needs of our industry and within the city of Houston. We've implemented pathways that ensure that all related programs are in alignment, such as those offered by our adult education literacy program, our continuing education programs, and then of course our credit programs. This is so that they feed into each other to ensure that that student continues on that pathway. In terms of retention, we're implementing the Caring Campus model, providing our faculty and staff professional development on best practices related to behaviors that ensure our students that we are here to assist them in meeting their educational goals. And we're looking at the implementation of an advisement platform to track students through their educational journey so that advisors and faculty know at all times where our students are and how best to keep them on track through completion. We currently do not have an advising platform. We want to increase the use of the 8-week sessions, allowing students to complete 12 hours within a given session so that by the end of each semester, they're able to complete 12 hours. Again, we'll work much more effectively with the academic degrees, but we're also looking at doing that with our workforce degrees that we're able to do that with. In reference to rigor and quality of instruction, we're continuing faculty professional development activities that focus on best practices to assist faculty in addressing the challenges encountered in the classroom and making sure that the support services information is made readily available to our faculty so that they can relay the information to our students so that they are able to complete their courses successfully. In terms of completion, we're working on the availability of external experiences such as internships and co-ops to provide our students with actual work experience that makes them more competitive to enter the workplace. In reference to transfer, you saw all data in reference to transfer, but we want to continue to increase those numbers by the implementation of our transfer centers throughout the district to allow students to easily obtain access to transfer information. We're going to coordinate more activities with universities, visits to our campuses to ensure that our students are taking the correct courses that they desire for completion of their program, and they're not taking courses that will not transfer on to the university. We're going to increase our co-enrollment agreements with universities to ensure transfer completions, just as the one that we have with Texas A&M University's engineering program and what we have with the U of H engineering program as well. We're going to create new articulation agreements to ensure that there is a sharing of data so that we know where our students are when they transfer to those universities. And of course, we're going to do more emphasis on reverse transfer. Those students who transfer, who complete the required courses at HCC and transfer early, even though we don't encourage it, when we work with our university partners, that's one of the conditions we ask is to let the student finish their degree here before they make that transfer. But again, those are students' decisions and some choose to transfer early. And overall, I just want to mention that these initiatives that we're incorporating, we're also going to be working with these same initiatives with our dual credit students who become much more vital now as a result of House Bill 8, but also with our AEL students as well as our continuing education students. So with that, I conclude the presentation. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you very much, trustees. Any questions?
Why did it take us 12 years to figure out we had a enrollment decline, and we're just now taking steps to address it? You know, I've sent a lot of data and graphs out to a lot of fellow board members about this decline, and you know, from I guess I'm encouraged that we've taken the first step. We've admitted after 12 years we've got a problem, and you can never fix a problem unless you admit to the fact that you have one. And it's time that we turn this institution around, and we should have never sat here for 12 years letting it get in the state that it's in. And it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to have to start at the board and the chancellor and everyone in this room to make that effort to turn this around, because we've been sitting around and not doing the work that we should be doing for the community and for the students. And I thank you for the report, and I thank you for the fact that now it's out in the open and we finally admitted it, and this institution is going to take some serious steps to correct the past 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to open with a word of thanks. I know a lot of effort went into pulling these materials together over a fairly decent stretch of the year. Dr. Burge, I know you and your office were instrumental in spending a lot of time on this, so thank you for. I agree with Trustee Wilson that it's been very encouraging to see the data cut and sliced and diced in this way so that it's very visible where our opportunities are. So thank you for that. I do have two questions and a comment. First question is on the adult learning population, the 25 plus cohort. I'm curious, do we know what offerings were attracting those students in particular to HCC? And I'm curious, like, it's the point that I'm trying to get to is, are those students still up for grabs, or is that cohort done? Like, have they been educated at an earlier age and they're no longer up for grabs because they're happily in the workforce and productively engaged, or is there still an opportunity to compete for them, to bring them back into the fold and use that as another level for enrollment growth?
That is still a group that we can attain, and we are wanting to focus on that group much more than we have in the past. And so yes, that definitely, we do know that is a population that probably is being underserved, probably want to be retrained, and we just need to make them aware of the availabilities of the training programs that we have. And we have a lot of short-term training programs, as you know.
Oh, thank you for that. Second question, similar vein, is on the academic associate's degrees. I think I audibly commented when I was on the flight, looking at that data, my neighbor kind of looked over surprised at the language that I used when I saw that graph. And so curious, I mean, a reduction in 50% roughly over a 6 or 7 year span is significant. So where are we seeing that erosion? Are there any programs that have really held up in that period of time that we can use as a model for the others to recover? Just curious for your thoughts of what our initial steps are for revitalizing those academic associate's degrees programs. Because again, a 50% reduction over the, from 2016 and beyond, that was a bit eye-catching, so.
One of the things that we have with the academic degrees is that at one time we were able to offer academic degrees, and then the coordinating board removed that from us being able to offer them, and now we're back to being able to offer those. So we are looking. We have fewer academic degrees than we have workforce degrees, and so that is one of the charges that I've talked to our Associate Vice Chancellor Curriculum and Learning Initiatives, is that we have the catch-all, which is the Associate of Multidisciplinary Studies. And so we're looking at how can we maybe break that down to where we have an Associate of Social Sciences, for example, to catch all of the social science majors. So we are looking at that so that I think we can keep better track of our students, because as you can see from the data, our largest enrollment is in the Associate of Multidisciplinary Studies.
Thanks for that, and then I'll stop filibustering with one final comment. I was very heartened to hear you say that directly bilateral negotiations with our friends in our four-year institutions. I think that would be a worthwhile topic to bring back to this committee at some point in the future when the details of some of those partnerships and agreements are fleshed out a little bit more. But I'm very heartened and excited to hear you plant that phrase in there, and really excited to hear more about it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really want to say I appreciate the standardized statistical analysis, and it is good for us to know what happened to us during COVID. We were on a constant decline, but COVID, I think, took 48% of our student population, and that was literally a nosedive. So it is good to see that we're on the improvement side of enrollment. Something I noticed that was very interesting, because I've been working with my high schools and middle schools. This is the first year that District 9 has had what do we call it, a TSI boot camp. 220 students showed up. That was very encouraging, but what was very interesting is I had 2 middle schools, and they had the most students to show up. I think that's something that we are, I think there's something that we have, or the high schools have come to understand, that I think that we need to correct, in that they're treating entry of Houston Community College dual credit enrollment as if it were an elitist institution. I literally asked some of those schools how many students they brought. Some of them brought 28 or 15 or 12. This is not an elitist institution. Houston Community College is literally a college for everyone who wants to learn. However, at the 9th to the 12th grade level, that is not being presented. And so this TSI boot camp was designed to train the students to take the TSI exam and make a minimum of 350. And so when I talked to some teachers the next day, they did not even know that there was a TSI boot camp, and these were high school students. The high schools are starting our students at the summer, they're going to the 11th grade. If adults have to take 6 years to get a 2-year degree, what makes this system think that high school students can get a 2-year degree in 2 years? That's not working for us. Certain high schools are pushing their agenda and onboarding in 7th and 8th grade because it takes a couple of times for that TSI boot camp to kick in and for those students to take the test and do well. And none of the high schools in my district are having the conversation about the credentials of value because they don't know. So I think that once these credentials of value are aligned, particularly in terms of the strategic enrollment management, we're going to have to start onboarding much earlier because we are not reaching the students. And I'm not sure if any of you have 11th graders, but about the time they get to 11th grade, they pretty much decided they're not coming to college. And then 10 years later, they figure out they need to. So we've got to engage these principals or engage the people who claim to be recruiting because they're not. And there is another TSI boot camp in my district, and this time the goal is 500 students and middle schoolers. If adults struggle with the TSI test when they come here, and we know that they do because we can see the enrollment in the remedial, the 4-hour English, math, remedial class, we see a high enrollment, then we've really got to work a little bit better with our K-12 students to make sure that they understand the options that are available to them. So I'm appreciative of what I see. I'd also like to see us increase, and I've asked for this for 6 years, I'd like to see us have Prairie View A&M University as one of the engineering schools, because I've asked the question several times and it's never been addressed. So we're going to have to look at our 4-year institutions for better opportunities of transfer. The airline industry is now looking at Texas Southern University for pilots, and we are now starting a pilot training program. And in my district, my community is being, they're taking the first course of drone, recreational drone licensing, because it's a way to get them acclimated. And so I'd like to see us take an aggressive approach, because I think that we need to. And if we do that, I think we would make a huge impact on our numbers. And if you all would send the board members your flyers about the courses and what is offered, because we all have social media constructs, and we also all have community liaisons that are not getting our information. And I'd like to see us work collaboratively so that we can increase our student enrollment together. This is very good. This helps me a lot. I know now where I should be looking. Thank you.
But thank you for your comments, Trustee. I do want to emphasize that our Chancellor has definitely set our bar very high, and the things that you've talked about are things that she's already mentioned to the team, and we are beginning to address those. Dual credit is one of them, and what we're doing with the high schools, what we're doing with our partners, and really reaching out, as you said, they have a pipeline as well, from elementary to middle school to high school, and we need to begin to address that middle school population as well. So we're working on it, and she's making sure that we're on top of it. Thank you.
One more thing. On page 11, it shows our 3-year graduation rate at 18%. We're the lowest out of the 10 colleges in Texas. The other thing that with that is the fact that our student to teacher ratio is 16.1 to 1 teacher. And at San Jacinto College, who has the best graduation rate, theirs is 25 to 1. I've never had anybody that could, I always thought it was the other way. It's explain that to me. Can you take a shot at that?
That's the state.
Is that one the state number or the IPEDS number? Was that the state number or the IPEDS number? So we are currently investigating those figures, because when you look at our IPEDS number, and I think we recently responded to a trustee inquiry on this point, our IPEDS number shows our student-teacher ratio to be much closer to San Jack's than our state numbers do. And so we've been investigating why there's a discrepancy. One hypothesis we have is that it may have to do with our student numbers coming from the beginning of the term before our flex students are in, and then our faculty numbers coming at the end of the term, which includes all the faculty teaching those flex classes. But we are actively working to understand why there's a discrepancy of that. Most of the schools have a fairly close number between iPads and the state. We are different. And so we're working to understand why that is the case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I congratulate the team for an excellent report. Thank you so very, very much. But I would like to respond as well, having been the interim Vice Chancellor for Instruction. One of the things that we saw over the years was that HCC focused on workforce development, workforce training in many instances, in addition to the academic transfer component for our students. And with all of the workforce programs that we have, they have a certain limit to the numbers of students that can be enrolled in those classes, in the labs, et cetera. And based upon the information that we were able to collect from the coordinating board at the time, is that HCC had more workforce programs than any other community college. And so if you look at our workforce programs, we have over 70 programs with 300 plus specializations, 300 plus specializations. And then you look at some of those specializations that are key, whether you're looking at health sciences, automotive technology, medical lab technology in the health sciences, et cetera. All of that makes a difference in terms of the numbers of students who can enroll. And then as you average that out, in many instances, those class sizes have to be much lower than in an academic class.
All right, the Academic and Student Affairs Committee meeting. Oh, thank y'all so much for the presentation. Sorry, got ahead of myself.
Thank you.
The Academic and Student Affairs Committee meeting is adjourned at
2:20 p.m.
The meeting of the Audit Committee for April 3rd, 2024 will now come to order at
2:21 p.m.
This meeting was called for the purposes listed on the duly posted meeting notice. The other committee members are trustees Monica Reichart and Dave Wilson, with alternate trustee Eva Laredo. A citizen desiring to appear before the Board of Trustees shall complete the hearing of citizen form 24 hours prior to the meeting and file said application with the Board Services Office. There are no citizens signed up to speak before the Audit Committee today. Our topics for discussion and/or action. Item 1, is there a motion to approve item A, approve the Internal Audit Department charter?
So moved.
There's second. Second. It has been moved and seconded. We will now have discussion on the item. Chancellor Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to the Internal Audit Department's charter, which is being presented for your consideration of approval. The charter is consistent with board policy CDC local. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Mr. Corrigan to come to the podium to present the item. Mr. Corrigan.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and trustees. In the February Audit Committee meeting, I provided the committee members with information in regards to the Internal Audit Department charter and to provide time for the members to review that information. We waited till April to come back and ask for your approval of the charters. So both the, well, this is just for the Internal Audit Department charter right now, but we're just asking for you to formally approve the Internal Audit Department charter. And I can answer any questions that you would have about the information we provided.
Committee members, are there any questions? There are no questions. This is great. If there are no questions, we're now ready to vote on item A, approve internal audit department charter. Voting is now open. Committee members, please cast your votes. The voting is now closed. Are we waiting?
We're waiting on one trustee.
On one.
Voting has concluded. The motion passed with a vote of 3-0.
Thank you. We will now, is there a motion to approve item B, approve audit committee charter?
So moved.
There's second. Second. It's been moved and seconded. We will now have discussion on the item. Chancellor Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item is presented to request your approval of the Audit Committee Charter. This charter contains no revisions to the current charter that was approved April 19th, 2023 by the Board of Trustees. With your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Mr. Corrigan once again, who's at the podium, to present the item.
And here again, in the February Audit Committee meeting, we provided the information about the Audit Committee charter. And to give you time, we waited till April to ask for you to formally approve the charter. So we're asking that you formally approve the charter, and I can answer any questions you would have about the Audit Committee charter.
Committee members, are there any questions? Outstanding. We are now ready to vote on item B, approve internal audit department charter. Voting is now open. Committee members, please cast your votes.
Voting has concluded. That's okay. Thank you. The motion passed with a vote of 3-0.
Outstanding.
And if you would allow me to go back and to display the previous item, I didn't get a chance to display it on the voting on the previous item on the kiosk.
Yes, please.
And that's just for the record. Thank you. No. You're serving as an alternate.
Is there a motion to approve item C, selection of external auditor, the RFP Evaluation Committee?
I'll move.
Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded. We will now have discussion on the item. Chancellor Ford Fisher.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to selection of the external auditor, RFP Evaluation Committee. With your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Mr. Jacob Atkins, Interim Vice Chancellor for Finance, to present the item. Mr. Atkins.
Thank you. So under revised policy, in terms of selecting the committee to review the respondents to the RFQ for hiring the external auditor, the Board of Trustees is allowed to identify and select 3 members from its body to serve on the committee. We need 1 individual from the audit committee and 2 individuals who do not serve on the audit committee to be selected and presented to administration so that we can add you to the RFP committee and provide you with the documents from the respondents for your evaluation. With that, I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions? So is our next step to choose or to recommend committee members?
there will need to be I'm not sure if this is on. There will need to be a vote of the audit committee for those 3 individuals that will then go to the consent agenda for the regular board meeting.
Are there going to be nominations? Yes, sir.
From the audit committee, I nominate Brietta Vanderbilt Stallworth, and from the rest of the board, Trustee Cheban and Trustee Laredo.
There's a second. It's been moved and seconded for the 3 trustee audit preliminary evaluation committee members.
Yes.
Thank you, but I decline. Thank you for the opportunity. Right.
Correct. So it was a parliamentary inquiry. The specification is 1 audit committee member and 2 non-audit committee members.
She's an alternate.
Right, so I'm
So
still
she's
on the audit
declining.
committee.
Oh, you're
Part of that
alternate.
group.
Well, and there's nothing in the policy that allows for an alternate, so we just need to select 3 members to serve on the evaluation committee today. So Trustee Laredo is on the audit committee, and I apologize for not catching that earlier. But we've got Trustee Vanderbilt Stallworth, who is a member of the committee, Trustee Cheban, who is not a member of the committee, and we need 1 more board member who is not a member of the committee.
I'll amend mine to Ward Johnson, Trustee Ward Johnson.
We now have Vanderbilt Stallworth, Ward Johnson, and Cheban. We're just really putting you to work. That's what happens when you're young. Is there a second to those 3 committee members?
I'll second, but what if she doesn't want to serve? Does it come back up again?
We would have to bring it back for an amendment if she didn't want to serve.
So it has been moved and seconded. We are now ready to vote on item C.
Give me 1 second to put the motion in.
Okay.
We've added a motion. A motion is that Trustees Vanderbilt Stallworth, Johnson, and Cheban serve as members of the evaluation committee for the external auditor selection.
And I wanted to provide an update. I just responded to Trustee Reichert's question, but for the benefit of the committee, if it turns out that Trustee Ward Johnson would prefer not to serve, then we can pull this. This will go to the consent agenda. It can be pulled from the consent agenda and amended on April 17th so that we don't have to wait until the next audit committee meeting.
Okay, works for us. We're not ready to vote. Trustees, committee, cast your vote.
Voting has concluded. The motion passed with a vote of 3-0.
Thank you. The meeting of the audit committee is now adjourned at
2:32 p.m.
Perfect.
Okay. I'm going to start if we have. I don't even know who's on the committee. Okay. The meeting of the Board Governance Committee for April 3rd, 2024 will now come to order at
2:32 p.m.
This meeting was called for the purposes listed on the duly posted meeting notice. The other committee members are Trustee Sean Cheban, Dr. Vanderbilt Stallworth, and alternate Trustee Lalou Davies. A citizen desiring to speak before the Board of Trustees shall complete the hearing of citizens form 24 hours prior to the meeting and file said application with Board Services. There are no citizens signed up to speak before the Board Governance Committee today. Is there a motion to approve items A through K as a consent item?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd ask that we pull item J from that list. So I'd move that we approve items A through I and item K on the consent agenda.
So
That's your motion?
procedurally, I want to make sure I understand, are you seeking unanimous consent to combine for one approval? Yes.
Yes, the intent is not to have to approve each one, so that's
Okay,
a
so the
combined.
request is for unanimous consent for items, and I want to make sure that we've got it correct, all except for K, is that right?
All except for J.
So,
J.
J. Okay, so then it's unanimous consent to vote on items A through I and K, correct?
So it does not require a vote, right?
Not
there's
if
unanimous
there's no
consent.
objection, then that does not require a vote, and then if everybody's in agreement, you can request a motion to approve these items, and then a second.
Okay. Any objection to combining them? Is there a motion to approve items A through I and item K?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. We'll now have discussion. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to item J, and that item pertains to the proposed changes to FLB local.
I'm sorry, we're doing A through I and K.
Okay, very good.
So we're
Thank
not
you so
doing
much.
J right now.
Very, very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Once again, members of the board, this item pertains to all items A through K, then KLM,
No, just A through I and then K.
A through I, and then K. And the proposed revisions to the local policy, some revised, some new. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Board Counsel Mahalik, Attorney Tredenik, General Counsel Smith to present the items. Thank you.
May I ask for unanimous consent to just take questions, if there are any questions?
No question.
Any questions? No questions. So seeing as there's no questions, I'm sorry,
I'll
Trustee
ask
Davies?
one question. Melissa, how's your day going since we made you come up to the microphone?
That's okay, I'm not finished, I appreciate it, I've got a few other items here, my day is just fine, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Davies.
It just got a whole lot easier.
So now we're ready to vote on items A through I and item K. Voting is now open. Board members, please cast your ballot.
Voting has concluded, and the motion passed with a vote of 3-0.
Okay, is there a motion to consider? Do we move to consider item J?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Mahalik, would you like to introduce the item, unless you would like to say something about it?
I'll just simply introduce the item, if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
Very, very good. So thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to item J, which is the proposed changes to FLB local policy, student rights and responsibilities, student conduct. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I defer to Board Counsel Mahalik and to Attorney Tredenik to present the item. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, I'm happy to review the changes to this, but since Trustee Cheban pulled the item, I'd also be happy to respond to any questions.
Yeah, I think less a question and more a motion. So I'd like to move to strike item 9, which has been added around adding the unauthorized use of our artificial intelligence to the policy change, as well as the subsequent phrase that also reinforces artificial intelligence as part of the policy change. Or is AI the whole policy change? And okay, I thought it was-
There are some, and so let me review them. I think I understand based on a question that you asked before the meeting what the concern is. So there are some changes in here to include some language regarding artificial intelligence and plagiarism. Those are consistent with language that's currently in the student handbook. There are some other changes that address, let's see, electronic means is used in place of emails and websites to broaden the definition of that to include other applications and other technological devices. But the main bulk of this revision, or the substantive portion, is this artificial intelligence language. So if I understand your concern correctly, you had some concern that this was too limiting, and I believe, and Lucy can correct me if I'm wrong, there is another policy that will address a different aspect of artificial intelligence that will be presented to the board at some point in the future. So, and I'm not sure if you were wanting to strike the language or to postpone consideration of this until they could be considered together.
Yeah, and I think this probably a point of parliamentary inquiry is the right way to go about it. My intent is to postpone the discussion of the artificial intelligence portions of this policy update until we see a holistic view of the policy recommendations around AI, be it a separate policy or, writ large, how HCC as an institution is going to leverage AI. I'm worried that as this stands current, I'm veering into debate now, so apologies, but I'm worried that this policy update, as is currently envisioned, veers more into cutting off the innovation of our students and limiting their ability to get creative and use AI to help them where they do need help and they see benefit to it. And I think waiting a couple of months until we get the full picture to have a fully considered discussion on the matter feels appropriate.
Okay, and so I'm going to defer to Lucy on this. My initial thought would be, because the other changes in this policy are not terribly substantive, that it may be more straightforward to just move to postpone consideration of this item until the other item is going to be brought forward, but I'm going to let Lucy.
If I can respond to your concerns, Trustee Cheben, this policy, so there is one change that's recommended by TASB. That change is to broaden that definition of electronic means so that it is easier for the administration in regulating student conduct to regulate things, infractions that go beyond the use of email. It's meant to move us a little more into the current technology. As far as the unauthorized use of AI and unauthorized disclosure, those are two different items that are both meant to respond to what the deans and the instructors have seen in the classroom in terms of concerns. One of the things about including the unauthorized use of AI in the student code of conduct, which then this policy change would bring the student code of conduct, which can be more specific than the board policy, but we always prefer that the board policy and the student code of conduct are lockstep in alignment as much as possible, is that there wasn't guidance previously to students and faculty members in terms of the use of AI, and using this unauthorized use language, which went through the Faculty Senate, it's my understanding, Instructional Services, the Dean's Council, so a number of bodies of the administrators who do this day-to-day work, was what they were seeing was some faculty members would assume students should never use AI, and were trying to enforce a standard that hadn't been clearly communicated to students. And some students were assuming they could always or never use AI. This standard with the unauthorized use language makes it clear that it is the responsibility of the faculty member to give clear instructions, both in their syllabus and on particular assignments, as to whether or not different artificial intelligence tools are allowed for that particular for that particular assignment or in that particular class. And then that way the behavior can be regulated more clearly. As I've been working with my colleagues, if something is not prohibited, it is permitted. So then we want to make sure that the faculty are all clear on that so that the students can be guided in their use. My concern about not having this in the policy is if a student seeks guidance in the policy, rather than going to the student code of conduct, they might experience some confusion, and I want to make sure that we're clear to the faculty and the students what the expectations are. I hope that's helpful.
May I just ask another kind of related question? There's a case that's getting some attention, I think it's out of North Georgia, about the use of Grammarly. And it was a student who used Grammarly, because it was a recommended, just for spelling and basic grammar. And it was being run through the whatever systems to check to see if there was AI used, and it was coming up as yes, using AI. And the student's been suspended, and there's been all of this other stuff going on. I want to make sure that we have our bases covered with regard to the use of basic spelling, checks and Grammarly and that sort of thing.
So right now there is, and my IT colleagues can provide more context if needed, but there is no tool that's approved for use for a faculty member to determine whether AI has been used or not. So what we are saying is because none of the tools, frankly, at this point are accurate. So what we are asking our faculty members to do is give clear instructions in their assignments and in their syllabus, and then follow their clear instructions to say, we expect on this rubric, we expect a good assignment to meet these following criteria, and if your assignment does this instead, it shouldn't use it. I know our faculty are working very diligently, and Dr. Perez can give more background on this, on how to use AI tools in the classroom. There's a lot of work being done, but no, students are not being punished for or found to be cheating for using tools that are allowable. There only is the issue if a specific tool is prohibited and there is a preponderance of evidence that the student has used the prohibited tool, then the student would be subject to discipline and academic consequences.
Got it. I think that makes this sort of even more important in my mind, because I know among the faculty there's a lot of concern about cheating, and that's specifically what a lot of this is about. And the term unauthorized, I think, kind of makes it clear. So I appreciate that. Melissa, do we need a vote to pull it, or can I pull it unilaterally, or?
Excuse me. Since we've already opened discussion, we'll need a motion to postpone and a second, and then a vote on that.
Okay.
And if we're postponing, I want to be very clear on the postponement, because we have to say when we're going to postpone it to, because otherwise it'll just push to the next meeting. And I think what I'm hearing is we want to postpone this until the other related policy is presented to the board. So the motion should state that so that it's clear for the minutes.
There's not a date.
And I have one more.
Lucy's telling me there's not a date certain for that.
Oh, okay. So I have one more comment, because this came up with the lawyers roundtable at ACCT, that when you have online college and you have your student required to be in class with their monitor on or off, that actually became a legal issue. And if we don't have anything in this student conduct that addresses that, then we need to have something in the Code of Student Conduct or in the policy that addresses the use of the visuals for online courses. That is a legal issue, and it's not. I couldn't find it anywhere where we addressed it.
So my understanding, and Dr. Perez can give more background on this issue, I know, is that we are not requiring students to have their cameras on during online classes, that the professor can request that they have their camera on to facilitate instruction, but there is no requirement. And you're right, there are some legal issues with requirements that a student show their personal space, and there's some case law in that realm. So for that reason, there is discretion on the part of the student, though certainly professors can gently encourage, for the purposes of a particular discussion, that students turn their cameras on.
The challenge was that the student wasn't there, or it wasn't the student. And that has happened quite a bit. So now, all of our electronic means, you can now blur the background, so you can't see what the student space is, because it's all a blur. So we need to address that. An encouragement by instructors, the students are not, for the most part, they're ignoring that.
And Trustee, let me add that you are correct. We do need to address that. I think we were trying to be sensitive during the time of COVID, and so that was one of the reasons that we really didn't look at that as a policy across the board. And we're being pretty flexible in terms of the faculty being able to make that determination, asking them to turn on their camera to acknowledge, like when they took attendance, so they could see who was the individual. but I think that we probably need to revisit that and look at a policy for the district going forward.
And so I think it's straightforward. It's either blur or provide a background that does not show the student's face. It was an easy fix now that they've actually fixed the issue in the delivery systems, because prior to that, there was really no fix in the delivery system. But now there is. You can either blur the background or you can provide an alternate background so that you don't see the student's face. But we do need to do that because it is a legal issue. So thank you.
Yes, trustee.
Trustee Davies?
Just a quick observation. When I was in college, pre-internet days, I guess, at this point, we had English Composition 1301, where you were graded based on how you composed what you wrote. So I don't understand how we're thinking. I mean, I don't know how Grammarly works, but if a student's grade is supposed to be dependent on their use of basic grammar and punctuation, how are we balancing that out in this conversation?
So I think that is the exact reason that we have this unauthorized use language, is so that where there is a reason related to the learning objective or the learning outcomes for the course, that a student should not use artificial intelligence, especially generative artificial intelligence, like with a composition class, that then the professor can make that clear and make it clear that it's related to an academic reason. It's not arbitrary. But then in other courses, the professors can choose to be silent because there is either no relationship to the learning outcome with the use of artificial intelligence, or it's a course dedicated to learning to use artificial intelligence, for instance, right? That's why we need some flexibility, I think, for our instructors in our programs to be able to make those determinations.
Thank you, Trustee Davies. Are there any motions with regard to item J?
I guess prior to making a motion, I have a point of information for Madam Chancellor. For our motion to postpone, what do you think an appropriate time to bring this back up would be? Is June enough time for your staff to pull that holistic view together, or?
I think June is an appropriate length of time to look at how we assess and bring it back. I do know that in the conversations, chat, GPT had become a problem as well. And so that was discussed, and it was determined that that would be considered plagiarism. And so many of our faculty members share that information with their students as well. But we also know that with respect to the images, one of the problems is that some of the software that we use, some of the means, and I won't call out the names of those platforms, but they have ghost machines also, and they show the images. Now, with one of the platforms that we looked at, it was one that would blur the images primarily because it would be using a biometric signature where the background would be blurred, and you would be able to determine the student's identity by the biometric that would be used in terms of a signature. So we've looked at that as well. And so given all of the litigation that has occurred with respect to a lot of the students who have complained, they filed the litigation with attorneys and they have won at some of their institutions, that's one of the reasons why those blurred images and the desire to not require students to turn on their devices to show their background has really been embraced by a number of institutions because the students have been suing and winning. So to answer your question directly, I think that June would give us an appropriate amount of time to review that and to come back to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chancellor. Then I move to postpone consideration of item J until our June committee meetings.
Melissa, I wanted to get your input on that as well.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine if that's a timeline that works. Alternatively, you can just postpone this until the other policies brought forward, and
that's what I would suggest.
And that way you don't have to have a date.
Let's do that then.
Certain in there, so if it's ready in May, it can come in May. If you say
Yep.
June and it's ready earlier, you're limited.
Okay, yeah, so then move it to where it's in a line, or to where it postpone until, our item J until the other policy yet to be numbered or named is ready.
There's a second.
You good?
Until the component policies, is that what the language we're using?
Companion policy.
Okay. So the motion I have is a motion to postpone consideration of the proposed changes to LB local policy, student and rights and responsibilities, student conduct until companion policies are presented. We ready for a vote?
Ready to vote.
Voting has concluded. The motion passed with a vote of 3-0.
Is there a motion to approve item L, proposed revisions to board bylaws, Article H, Section 2, board expenditures, board account for community affairs?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. We'll now have a discussion on this item. It says board counsel. Mahalik will introduce the item unless Dr. Ford Fisher wanted.
Okay, thank you very much. With the board expenditures report.
No.
Focusing
This
on
is item L.
8. Item L, okay, very, very good. Thank you so much. So thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to item L, and because Ms. Mahalik is at the podium, we ask you to respond to that item, please.
So the requested revision here was my suggestion to update the BACA provisions in the board bylaws to ensure that BACA expenditures are compliant with Senate Bill 17. The language that's being recommended for inclusion here tracks the language from policy BI local, so it's consistent with board policy. As you all may remember from our previous discussions on Senate Bill 17, the college is required to submit, or the board rather is required to submit a report that annually that says that we're been compliant with Senate Bill 17, and then there are biannual audits that check expenditures. This would be an expenditure that would be subject to that audit. So it's important that all BACA funds are used in compliance with Senate Bill 17.
Now, I would, with regard to this item in particular, I would suggest, I think this is an important conversation that the entire board needs to have because it's going to require us going into closed session. So my recommendation would be we pass it for the purposes of putting it on the consent agenda, pulling it in the next, pulling it from the consent agenda and then discussing it during closed session when we're all together so we don't have duplication of work.
And in that regard, I do have some more specific legal advice that I can provide with the full board at that time.
Wonderful. Any questions from my fellow trustees? If not, we're ready to vote on this item.
Voting is closed. The motion passed with a vote of 3-0.
We'll now move to item M, Board Expenditures Report for Fiscal Year 2024, September 1st, 2023 through February 29th, 2024. This is a report action, no item. This is a report item, no action is required. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to the board expenditure reports for fiscal year 2024 for the period of September 1, 2023 through February 29, 2024. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Ms. Wright to come to the podium and present the item. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This item provides an overview, as Dr. Ford Fisher mentioned, of board expenditures to include travel, as well as the BACA funds for the periods of September the 1st, 2023 through February. We have February 29th, we have a total of expenditures in travel of $68,356 and expenditures in the BACA funds of $15,350.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Any questions from any of my fellow trustees? If not, this meeting will be adjourned at
2:57 p.m.
Thank you.
Right on time. There's something wrong with you. Something is wrong with you.
The meeting of the External Relations Committee for April 3rd, 2024 will now come to order at
3:00 p.m.
This meeting was called for the purposes listed on the duly posted meeting notice. The other committee members are Trustee Monica Reichhardt, Dr. Adriana Tamez, and alternate Eva Laredo. A citizen desiring to appear before the Board of Trustees shall complete the hearing of citizen forum 24 hours prior to the meeting and file said application with the Board Services Office. There are no citizens signed up to speak before the External Relations Committee today. We will begin with item A, 2024 National Legislative Summit and related policy matters. This is a report item. No action is required. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item pertains to, as was indicated, the 2024 National Legislative Summit and related policy matters. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Dr. Ramel Young to come to the podium to present the item. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chancellor. Members of the board, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to share our external relations activities, particularly those that we experienced in Washington, D.C. in February. So we had a great trip in Washington, had a lot of information that we were able to carry to Washington and also receive from attending the National Legislative Summit. The National Legislative Summit is held annually in Washington, D.C., typically in February. It has present there approximately just over 1,000 community colleges from around the country. And we were one of those 1,000 plus community colleges descending upon our nation's capital and upon the National Legislative Summit that are jointly held by the American Association of Community Colleges and the Association of Community College Trustees. Our trustees were present. We had an opportunity to go to Capitol Hill. We have some news to report from those visits. We are being contacted by our members of our congressional delegation, the Harris County Congressional Delegation, and our U.S. Senators. As a result of our trip, we've had some grant opportunities that the Grants Office is helping us with now. So the initiative that was predominantly put forward was advancing America's community colleges. That's the message that we took to Capitol Hill. The purpose of the event is designed to educate community college leaders about federal policy issues. It allows us and participants to go to the U.S. Congress, the 118th Congress, to carry the policy agenda to the nation's capital. We had an opportunity to hear from experts in the field with regard to policy matters, political climate, legislative issues impacting community colleges. Participants were positioned to advocate and support community colleges and with our students helping us on Capitol Hill. Some of the initiatives that were put forward, these are the principal initiatives that appeared on the agenda for the conference, and they are federal Pell Grants, and you're intimately familiar with those. I think we have the Pell Grant increase in 2003 was $500, so it's running about $7,400 for students. We got great reception, I think, from both sides of the aisle on Pell Grants. Financial aid was something that we talked about, increasing funding to programs like TRIO, Gear Up, and our team in our grants department here at HCC, and I don't know if they're in the room, but if they are in the room, please stand and be recognized. They prepared a document that we left as a leave behind with our legislative members, our congressional members. It depicted all the grants that we get from the federal government. It identified TRIO dollars that we get from the federal government, Pell Grant dollars that we get from the federal government, leaving that information behind to allow them to see the work that they're doing, that we're bringing back to Houston to serve our students. Increasing funding for Hispanic serving institutions, Asian Americans and Black students. Programs for financial aid are being asked to be increased in terms of the funding. The Higher Education Act of 1965, we've been working on reauthorization for that act for an extensive period. Native Texan is responsible for the Higher Education Act, past President Lyndon Baines Johnson, and so it provides funding for our students, helps them restore eligibility for students who lack a high school diploma. Those dollars are found in the Higher Education Act. And then there was an accountability issue related to advancing institutional accountability. We get that from the state as well, creating federal student record systems, establishing more accurate measures for counting graduation rates, and ensuring access to the for basic needs for our students. And then you see basic needs here, workforce development dollars, veterans were on the bill, and also tax benefits, particularly as it applies to ending taxation to Pell Grants. Our students are adversely impacted by that, and we've asked our legislators, our congressional members, to remove that item from the provisions of the tax code. I indicated that we went to Capitol Hill, and want to thank our trustees for helping us do that. You see them here. They were, well, when you go to Capitol Hill, there's a lot of walking, so we certainly want to thank the trustees for taking that trek from Rayburn to Cannon to Longworth, and then back across the Capitol to the Hart Building. So there's a lot of walking. I know we got our 10,000 steps in during this visit. We were going from building to building, and so you see the delegation, the HCC delegation, not the congressional delegation, but the HCC delegation, comprised of our trustees who were combing the halls of Congress to carry the HCC policy message. And so we thank you, trustees, for your diligent work on Capitol Hill. And these are the members of Congress that comprise our delegation. Our members include Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Congressman Al Green, Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia, Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, Congressman Dan Crenshaw, Senator John Cornyn, and Senator Ted Cruz, all of whom we had a chance to meet, talk to, and carry our policy agenda. We thank these members for making themselves available. Everybody is busy and running from place to place, but they were there, and they listened to our trustees who carried the policy message to them with respect to all the agenda items that we had a chance to talk about at the National Legislative Summit. In fact, on the grant side of things, we've been hearing almost weekly from the Office of Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher on a grant opportunity. So we're working on something that came forward from our visit on Capitol Hill that she's tried to push forward on our behalf. And likewise, we have the same kind of reception from the other members. So we're thankful to them for making themselves available, and to the board for making yourselves available to go to Washington and lead the delegation talks. Key takeaways from our visit. I thought that Pell Grants received great reception from the members. Our delegation members were particularly interested in Pell Grants. Multiple members expressed support for community projects. You may remember, I think maybe 2008 was the last time we had the opportunity to pursue earmarks. No longer earmarks. There's a moratorium on earmarks, but there are items called community projects, and we are the beneficiaries of at least one of those to the tune of about $2 million, not from the past visit that we just had, but the year prior. We had an opportunity to visit with a member of Congress who helped us with our resiliency efforts to the tune of $2 million. And so community projects are a viable opportunity for us to pursue, and we are doing that where it makes sense for the college. HCC's focus on credentials of value at the state level were in alignment with what I thought we heard from our federal policy people, and so we're doing the right things there. And post-congressional member visits, federal grant opportunities have emerged, and I just mentioned that. We had a great visit, I think. In my estimation, we had a great visit, and I'm available for any questions that you might have. Thank you for going to Washington with us.
Any questions or comments? Trustee?
One comment, and we embarrassed you about this last time, but I'll do it again. Just really appreciate your help and Blake's support and the support of all the staff that helped us prepare for that visit. It was my first time doing something like that, and it felt natural, it felt easy, no, all the walking notwithstanding, and just really appreciate all the effort that went into making it appear like that in the moment. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you being there.
Trustee Davis, did you want to comment? It was your first time too. Oh, Trustee Laredo, I'm sorry. We were talking about the legislative summit. Trustee Laredo.
I also want to say thank you for all your support. Thank you for leading this and preparing, and the packets were really good. And we did have a great visit. I must say that it was very, very cold out there.
It was cold.
But yeah, Our legislative team always looks forward to seeing Houston Community College there, and I know I didn't go to one of the visits, and she made sure she called me and she said, she knew I was around White, and I was at your office. I didn't know where the other team had gone the other way, but I was in the main building, so I was there, so.
Thank you, trustee. We
But it was
appreciate you being
great, so thanks again for the opportunity.
there. Our pleasure.
Yes, I do agree that these visits are very important, that they see our faces, and we have continue to build those relationships with our Congress people as well. Trustee Davis?
I would just say, Dr. Young, I think one of the bright spots to me was how, issues around Pell Grant, around, workforce were sort of galvanizing around bipartisanship. I
Yes.
think any office that we went to visit, they were receptive of what we were talking about. And so I think, for what it's worth, it's a good thing to be able to have an issue that can bring both the proverbial both sides together in Congress. So thanks.
Thank you for being there. We appreciate it.
All right.
That's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comment? All right, the External Relations Committee meeting is adjourned at?
Thank you.
3:11 p.m.
Perfect. Thank you. I love that picture. The marketing committee.
At 3:30.
Marketing is
Gotta wait.
next.
Because it-
Marketing is next. Yeah, 3:30, 4. Right. Yeah, 3:30.
The meeting of the Marketing Committee for April the 3rd, 2024 will now come to order at
3:31 p.m.
This meeting was called for the purposes listed on the duly posted meeting notice. The other committee members are Trustees Charlene Johnson, Lalou Davis, and alternate Adriana Tamez, and yours truly. A citizen desiring to appear before the Board of Trustees shall complete the hearing of citizen form 24 hours prior to the meeting and file said application with the Board Services Office. There are no citizens signed up to speak before the Marketing Committee today. We will begin with item A, sports teams advertising and 2024 spring marketing campaign. This is a report item. No action is required. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and members of the board. This item is, as Chair Laredo indicated, pertains to the update on HCC sports teams advertising and 2024 spring marketing campaign. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Dr. Ramel Young to come to the podium to present the item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chancellor, board members, Madam Chair of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to share information about our marketing campaign. Of course, we'll talk about sports teams and then the marketing campaign as a general proposition. I wanted, before starting, to say thank you to all of the people who are instrumental in making the marketing and communications efforts go forward, and those other people that are in the marketing and communications department, some of whom may not be in the room, but they are watching via video, so we want to convey that our appreciation. There's a lot of work that goes into seeing people's pictures on a billboard or a piece of collateral, and I get to talk about it, but they are putting it together, so I want to just say thank you. Steve is in the room, so Steve, if you're, raise your hand. Yes, so Steve. Thank you, Steve, for your efforts. Sports teams. So HCC is no stranger to working with sports teams in marketing. In fact, we have been working with the Houston Astros, Dynamo, Sugarland, Space Cowboys, the Rockets. In the past, we've worked with the Houston Texans. In fact, the Houston Texans must have heard that we're giving this report today because I heard from them last week. And then we've been in places where we're advertising where Wimbledon is going on. So large numbers of people have an opportunity to put their eyes on HCC. Prior HCC marketing efforts include advertising with those entities. And in 2023, 2024, that's our current period, we have, as part of our digital marketing campaign, efforts to work with some of these teams. In 2020, just right on the cusp of the pandemic, we were ready to work with the Astros and the Dynamo, and of course the pandemic restricted that ability. And so what you see here is the arrangement that we had between the Astros and the Dynamo. The opportunities to the tune of $100,000, just under $100,000 for each of those entities. With the Astros, it was being able to do the first pitch, Q&A with 3 executives, LED and a half inning with our logo and everything posted on it. Orbit was the Astros mascot appearance for 2. And then on the other side, you see some of the things that we were going to be able to do with the Dynamo. Those opportunities still exist to some degree. Again, we're working in this period, our spring marketing campaign, and going forward with the digital side of things with the Astros and other entities like the Dynamo. So the spring 2024 real world education campaign, that's where we are now. That's the campaign that we are advancing now. And you've seen the collateral associated with that. The agencies with whom we're working are Kahlberg, represented here today by Chuck Kahlberg, and Ross Wingo. If you can just kind of raise your hands there. Ross, said you're in the room? Okay, thank you. And then we have also outreach strategists that's responsible for putting all the collateral together. And I think we have in the room today Mustafa Tamiz and Sabia Gire. Thank you for your efforts. And Gilbert wasn't able to get here today. They had a prior commitment, but Gilbert is responsible for doing all of our Are you here? There you are, there you are, there you are. Thank you, thank you, thank you. they are responsible for getting out all of our, well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it a little bit. We'll talk about it. So our campaign goals: build brand awareness, drive recruitment, increase retention, increase regard for HCC, increase business and community partnerships, and drive philanthropic support. Those are the goals of the campaign. And so you've seen some of this collateral before. There has been, since we put this together, we work with trustees, we work with our faculty, staff, students to build this campaign. It wasn't a, here's what we're doing. We talked with everybody we could talk to. We did surveys to determine whether or not this was the thing we should be doing. And so what you see here is the culmination, the aggregated thoughts of everyone at the institution that we could talk to, and we brought this to you. And so I'll ask just briefly if we can, Mustafa and Sabia, if you can come up. So just one intervening thought before I proceed.
Dr. Young, thank you. We just wanted to highlight the campaign won an award from AVA with the International Digital Award for putting it together. So I'll just read the subscription here. It says, 2024 Platinum winner, Houston Community College, Real World Education Campaign, Video Production and Commercial in partnership with Outreach Strategists. We're very proud that the campaign has done very well, but the real results are that the increase in our enrollment. So these accolades are nice, but the results are actually more important. So thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mustafa. And so we're doing television commercials in addition to the collateral you're seeing here. And so if you don't mind, just run that television commercial.
When the alarm goes off, don't stress about what comes next. At Houston Community College, we make your lessons matter. Do you love helping others? Turn caring into a career. Interested in tech? Code your way to a career. Want to make your voice heard? Build a business. Hands-on enthusiast? Construct a career. Open the door to HCC's real-world education, where passions become careers.
And the Spanish version, if you don't mind.
Cuando suene la alarma, no te preocupes por lo que sigue. En Houston Community College, hacemos que tus lecciones importen. ¿Te apasiona ayudar? Transforma el cuidado en una carrera. ¿Pasión por la tecnología? Codifica tu camino hacia una carrera. ¿Quieres hacerte escuchar? Construye un negocio. Manos a la obra, construye una carrera. Abre la puerta a la educación del mundo real de HCC, donde las pasiones se convierten en carreras.
All right, thank you. So these are the existing commercials, and I think we're developing new commercials that will come for summer and then into the fall. So this is what's running now. I know some of the trustees may not have seen these and others have, but it's an opportunity for everybody to see those items. And so now comes, how is the campaign doing? What are we doing and what are the results of the campaign? And so I'd like to invite up Mr. Ross Wingo, if you don't mind coming up, to walk us through what we're doing with our outdoor boards, how well they're doing. Outdoor partners, we have 5 billboards in and around the city that display our students on it, speaking about the Real World Education Campaign and the services we provide. So if you don't mind just kind of walking us through.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good to be here today. So yeah, the digital creative matched the creative out in the real world, of course. The messaging, very compelling here, especially when you blow it up on a large billboard. I think the whole marketing team, all the agencies, HCC combined, we felt, the colors really popped, the messaging really popped. And then I think it was just mentioned 5 billboards around Houston, and those were in various locations off of I-10 and 45. Over 87 million impressions. It's a lot of eyeballs, but most importantly, we feel like the messaging was really compelling, and yeah, resonating with what students, their priorities and their ambitions. So, all right, so I'll move forward here. I'll speak to this, and then if anybody wants to add to it, this is the, should I speak to this part? Okay. So the Gilbreth team, they executed a movie theater cinema partnership buy. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody. We implemented a NCM media campaign in the theaters. If many of us remember some of the theater advertising that used to play, well, they've extended themselves a little bit further to even using digital. So our flight was from December 1st through January 31st, and using National Cinema, not only did we communicate during the theaters, and we also on screen, we also digitally communicated outside the theater in the lobby. But the main thing about this is that during this time period, reaching our target audience, we re-engaged with our audience outside the theater through YouTube, targeting Beyonce and Taylor Swift moviegoers. And the video was viewed 95% to completion. And what that means that if you were looking at that particular communication, you looked at it from 90% to 100% completion of the video. And the average is 65%. So we over excelled in that particular area. So as far as the video completion rate. So we retargeted again. We utilized video and OTT. We re-engaged that audience again. So we were making sure that we maxed with the dollars that we had in getting brand awareness. And further on in that, we use some traditional multicultural media, which is print. And some of the publications was the Forward Times, Keonda Magazine, Vietnam Post. We also use the Jewish Herald, Houston Defender, and Southern Chinese News. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, trustees. So some of the television partners you see here, ABC 13, of course, we indicated that we work with the Astros, KPRC. I won't just go through these. You can basically see these. For radio, you see some of the partners here. You're familiar with some of the call numbers, Magic 101.2, 97.9, The Box, other stations. Radio and print media, you just heard a little bit about the print media. Digital platforms, YouTube, Amazon, Twitch. We don't use TikTok. Remember, statutorily, the law restricts our ability to work with TikTok. The state law restricts our ability to do that. There's been some talk at the federal level, but not much traction has caught up to that yet. But state law, we're not able to. And this is the total impressions that we have for the entire campaign period for television, radio, outdoor, print, digital, and cinema that we just heard about. Ross, any comments around the total number?
So the goal was finding the right balance between upper funnel tactics and lower funnel tactics. So I think as a contingent, multiple marketing agencies, and of course with HCC, we achieved what we were setting out to do. 111 million impressions. That wasn't necessarily a magic number we were going for, but it illustrates the scale, how many people saw the campaign through different mediums. And then there's another metric that we looked at, cost per 1,000 impressions. So that was under $6. So that means search engine marketing, billboards, radio, all that blended together, the cost per 1,000 impressions was only between $5 and $6, which we feel like was a good balance. We balanced out the quality of the placements with the reach. At the top of the funnel, people were seeing the billboards outside, and then if they were doing, research about community colleges or higher education on Google, we were appearing there as well and driving them to the website. So overall, I think we all feel like it was a very well-constructed campaign, and you guys are honestly present everywhere, digitally and traditionally.
So during the spring period, we spent $650,000 on the marketing that you just heard about. You see it represented over to the left: TV, cinema, radio, outdoor, print, search, digital. We spent most of the dollars on outdoor. The billboards are expensive, but maybe not expensive in this market because we're the fourth largest city in the country with a little over 4 million people in and around the region that we serve. And so, but it is a sizable expenditure. And then you see the percentages with regard to what's next. TV, relatively expensive, but captures a large group of individuals. And Steve, if you don't mind just closing us out with this slide, and then we'll take questions from the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Ramel. I get the best part. I get to show you a picture, which I think says more than anything I could say. And thank you to Dr. Burridge and her team for putting this together. If you follow these numbers, they go back 4 years. If you see, 3 years. If you see where we were with that gold bar, that's where we were after COVID. We fell 5.35% from the previous year. Our marketing campaign began with Frame Your Future last year, if you remember that. This team put together the plan. We jumped 5.75% to the blue bar, and this year we're up 7.76%. That's the best indication that we're moving in the right direction, and we want to continue to do that as time goes on. And get the next one. Yeah, just the next one. And this just really tells you the story of the effectiveness of this particular campaign. Impressions overall up 139% over spring last year. Clicks to the website up 136%. We spent a little bit more money, 148% over spring last year. Thank you to the board for that increase. And this growth came at a time when the National Education Clearinghouse says community colleges across the country were up 1.2% this spring, and we're up 7.7%. So that's a good achievement. Sports teams we'd really like to put in our mix, and we will as the budget makes it affordable for us to do that. We're always considering that, talking to partners all the time. We want to keep our focus on growth and make sure that we're still growing with our digital campaigns and our traditional campaigns. Thank you, and we're open for questions.
Any members or board members, any comments?
I have a question. So I know we do a lot of advertising with professional sports, but are we doing anything at the high school stadiums where we can recruit those kids?
And we haven't done as much with the sports teams, professional sports teams lately. Not since preceding 2020. And I think the last time was when we were doing work with the Astros. But the question with regard to high schools, I think we've had at least one inquiry. We're not doing anything that I'm aware of. We're not doing anything with high schools, so we can certainly look at that mix and determine how that fits within the marketing campaign plan.
Oh, okay, because I know
Definitely can do that.
it may be, some of them may not have the digital access, but some basketball gyms may have it, and some football stadiums where they may have the playoffs or something where we can recruit those students.
Friday night football is a big deal in
for the
Texas.
fans, right? Friday night football is a big deal, and so some of the parents and some of the students, may want to have that option.
That's an opportunity we'll explore for sure. Thank you.
Yes.
Sure. I have a couple of comments and then question in sticking with the theme that Trustee Ward Johnson mentioned. One thing that came to mind once you mentioned sports, I thought signing day, and because that's sort of a preview for those students who are cheering on their colleagues who are going on to go play sports at some place. There could be some opportunities there for us. The question I wanted to ask was, as far as in ideating, and this might be a question for Russ, the imagery that you settle on, is there any involvement of a target audience, which
Ross,
would
you want to come this
be,
way? Ross, you want to come this way?
and how much of, I don't know if we do focus groups or anything along those lines to see how they react to different messages and how much that guides.
Sure. So I don't necessarily want to kind of step too far outside the scope of what Carlberg does. I think the short answer is yes. So I know outreach strategists, they kind of spearheaded driving the creative, so I don't know if they want to weigh in as well.
So trustee, we have the team that does the creative, which is all the collateral that you see. And then we have an ad buyer, which is what the Kahlberg Group, Ross, does. And so they're going and actually buying the ads. That's how we get the ads put up. But in terms of the development of the campaign itself, outreach strategies. And so,
Trustee, it's a very good question, because in essence, you don't want to just put collateral out there that's pretty or looks nice. You want to put collateral out there that's effective. So we went through a long process of collecting that data. Then we did some focus groups with the collateral to figure out what would work best, and then develop that over time. And the fruit of that has been not just the kind of the award that the campaign has won, but also increase in our overall recruiting. So that's been the nice part about it. But you're absolutely right. Even in the performance of the ads, that people are seeing it much longer than they would see traditional ads on the internet. So that's why it's working well, because we tested it, and that was really the guidance we got from the marketing committee in the past, to put out to create collateral that's effective, that's going to move the needle, not just something that looks nice. And so, very good question, and that we're very disciplined about that. Thank you.
Since you're up here, Mustafa, I don't know if you also help select the talent. I personally know that Trustee Wilson has been looking for his acting debut. He could play an electrical instructor or a diligent student. So I'm his agent if you need one. So
thank you, sir.
Any other comments, questions? Yes.
I've got one question. I learned at a social intelligence presentation at the conference we went to last week that the applying to college subreddit is the most trusted source for folks that are looking to apply to colleges, and it's got something like 1.1 million followers that are engaged on that subreddit trying to get information. So long-winded preview of what are we doing to get our word out on Reddit in terms of advertising?
I love that you're mentioning that, because for summer and spring, this is actually a bullet point that we wanted to discuss with Mr. Lester Jett. Yeah, Reddit, of course. I mean, even in my industry, I go to Reddit to kind of find raw, sort of unvarnished opinions about marketing and feedback on what has and hasn't worked. So absolutely, with thinking about colleges and higher education, especially since there's a big price tag that is associated with it. I mean, it's a place where a lot of people can go and find, relatively trustworthy information. Yes, we definitely want to put you guys there in Reddit later this year. So I think it's going to be an ongoing conversation with us about making that happen.
so the summer campaign is rolling out next month. And then we have fall, which is typically when we make big shifts. So that the opportunity exists. And I know there's been a lot of postings about Reddit online that I've had opportunity to read as well. Okay. All right.
Also, great job on that ad. Thought it was incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, well, y'all, everybody knows that I'm a sports nut. So, but I also, in going to some of these conferences, they also target, our sports teams in the community colleges. And so I said, well, this is another way for us to continue to reach out to them, because I know that when we wear that HCC shirt, hat, that we're all ambassadors. So we're all ambassadors for HCC. So I just want to continue us to put us out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Any more questions? If none, thank you for
That's it.
listening to us. We appreciate it.
No, great job. Thank you. The marketing committee is now being adjourned at
3:55 p.m.
Thank you to everyone. You have 5-minute break before we start.
Dr. Deal.
Committee of the Whole meeting for April 3rd, 2024 will now come to order at
4:07 PM.
This meeting was called for the purpose as listed on the duly posted meeting notice. A citizen desiring to appear before the Board of Trustees shall complete the hearing of the citizen's forum 24 hours prior to the meeting and file said application with the Board Services Office. There are no citizens signed up to speak before the Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion to approve item A, tuition and fees for continuing education units and non-credit classes?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. I present this item to seek your approval of the attached schedule of continuing education units and non-credit classes for the 2024-25 academic year, and to establish CEU and non-credit courses that may be offered during 2024-25 academic year based upon the then current market rates. So with your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Dr. Perez and Dr. Michael Webster to the podium to address all questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor, Madam Chair, and trustees. This is an item that we bring up every year. I'm not sure whether they have the, oh, there you go. Nope, that's not it. It's not, okay. This is an item, and I believe you guys have it. It's an item that we bring up every year regarding the CE tuition and fees. And if you look at the presentation, or if you see the list of courses and fees, you'll see that there are no changes at all that are being made this year. We have added those that are highlighted in yellow, or those courses that were new, that were not approved by the board last year, which is what we do every year, is to bring you the new programs that we initiated for you to make that approval. But the way that the tuition and fees are determined for the programs is all the direct costs, indirect costs, and expected enrollments are taken into consideration. We look at the industry market-based pricing, and then the pricing is benchmarked against our competitors of our surrounding schools. So that's how they determine what the cost should be for those programs, and it's always to break even. And so if you have any questions, Dr. Webster or I can answer those questions.
Are there any questions, trustees? Trustee Wilson?
On the sports fee, is it listed here? Are we still collecting that? And is there an account?
That is not a fee of this. That would be under the original tuition and fees list. But
Not in this list?
Yes, so that's a question I would have to defer to Jacob if we're still charging that, but it's not part of this agenda item.
Thanks.
Are there any additional questions? If there are no additional questions, we'll move to vote.
Thank you very much.
Is Dr. Tomaz? Okay, she dropped off. Never mind. Voting has concluded. The motion passed with a vote of 8-0.
There a motion to approve item B, monthly investment reports, financial statements, and budget reviews for January and February 2024.
So moved.
It has been moved and seconded. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item is a recommendation to accept the investment reports, financial statements, and budget review for the month of January and February 2024. With your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Interim Vice Chancellor, Mr. Jacob Akin, to present the reports. Mr. Akin.
Thank you, Chancellor, Madam Chair, members of the board. So as we review the finances for the month end of February, a few things I'd like to point out. First, we still have 4 main sources of revenue at the institution, and that will continue indefinitely. Ad valorem taxes, tuition and fees, state appropriations, and investment earnings. Through February, we're seeing significant increases in our collection rates for ad valorem taxes, tuition and fees, and investment earnings. So we expect that our total revenue generated will exceed the budget that we put together for FY 2024. You can see here some of the detail. I'll move through that quickly as we will cover much of this in our next presentation regarding the board workshop. One item I'd like to point out that is of particular interest as we prepare to present the budget for FY 2025 is the rate of inflation that we're seeing. For the last year, that's being recorded at 3.2%. This is also reflected in the Social Security Administration's confirmed increase in cost of living of 3.2%, and that will have significant impacts on some of the decision-making that we are making and asking you to make as we move forward. A few changes as requested. On the presentations here, you'll notice that we've added indicators to our budgeting document as well as to our expense records. Essentially what we're trying to show here is to highlight for the board where we expect to see significant increases in revenue collected and where we expect to see either a significant budget surpluses or potential budget overages. As a general rule, and with our policies and procedures at HCC, we do not exceed our budgets, and that has been the case for many, many years. What we have done is generated far more revenue than we have budgeted, and that's the issue that we will be discussing in the next presentation. So with that, I would take any questions regarding the financial statement report.
Are there any questions, trustees? Just explain the fund balance transfer in why we're still doing that.
So as part of our process, we transfer fund balance in to the budget at the beginning of each year to cover deferred maintenance. And so that fund balance transfer in is limited to items related to deferred maintenance.
So if we're doing it as well as we are, why are we still doing that? Why are we still transferring fund balance in?
So that is a long-standing practice that we've had as an institution. You'll notice in our upcoming presentation that we're going to propose that we start to utilize some of our current operating budget to address deferred maintenance. We also have a significant cash reserve, twice what we have declared that we need under policy. And so we're being far too conservative with the amount of cash we're carrying. We would still like to transfer fund balance into the budget so that we can more aggressively address our deferred maintenance deficiencies across the various campuses of the institution.
Are there any other questions, trustees? No questions? Okay. If there are no further questions, we are ready to vote on item B. Thank you so much.
Voting has concluded. The motion passed with a vote of 8-0.
Item C, report on FY 2024 Budget Development Board Budget Workshop Number 4, overview of preliminary operating budget. This is a report item. No action is required. Dr. Ford Fisher will introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. This is Board Workshop number 4. The intent is to hear feedback from you as we present an overview of the preliminary operating budget. With your approval, Madam Chair, I invite Mr. Akin to the podium once again to present. Mr. Akin.
Thank you, Chancellor. So what we would really like to do in this presentation is to help you better understand the financial pressures and opportunities that we see from an administrative perspective as we start to put forth our recommendations for the FY 2025 budget. We would also like to use this as an opportunity to solicit feedback from you regarding what you feel are the most significant priorities as we move forward with budget development. It's very important from a finance perspective that the approach that we take aligns strongly with our mission and helps to financially support the priorities that we've set as an institution. The way we spend money is a reflection of our goals and our objectives as an organization. So please keep that in mind as we move forward. Currently, we're in April of 2024. Next month is the last opportunity that we have to present a budget for review and feedback, as in June we'll be coming forward with a final recommendation and would hope and need your approval of the final budget in June. And so this month and next month is our opportunity to make sure that we have considered all of the needs, considered all of your feedback, and are building a budget that you believe will help us take HCC to the next level. So if we could talk about enrollment trends. If you look at this slide under FY 2024, that is a 5% projected increase over enrollments from last year. We will most likely be somewhere between 87,000 and 89,000 in total head count, but there is a possibility, particularly as you consider the incredible growth that we had during spring semester, that we could hit the 90,000 mark this year. And then you can see that we're trying to provide multiple options for a conservative or an optimistic approach at 2.5% or 5% as we move forward for planning for FY 25. Under House Bill 8, we get awarded based on credential. And the formula is fairly complicated. Please allow me to try and explain how it works. We get to use the greater of the actual completions finished by our students, or the 3-year average of the completion of our students for each individual category. So you'll notice that there are 5 lines that are highlighted in green. Those are the areas where it's more advantageous for us to take the average of 3 years than it was to take the actual performance of FY 23. Under HB8, we're always doing a 2-year look back. So we get awarded in FY 25 based on how we performed in FY 23. You can see here that anytime you're taking the average of the last 3 years, that indicates a general decline, right? Otherwise, you would expect that your most recent year would be your highest performing year. So those highlight some of the areas of focus for us as an organization, and this hails back to the presentation that Dr. Burridge gave, particularly as it relates to our academic associate degrees. In terms of revenue and the way that we align our enrollment and our revenue, on this graph you can see that the red line is a reflection of our projected enrollment, where the green bars are a projection of our state appropriations. As we become more effective at helping our students to complete, the goal and expectation would be that our funding rate should exceed the growth rate of our enrollment. So the green bar should routinely be ending up higher than the red bar of enrollment. FY 25 is a flat year, again, based on prior year activity that we have no control over at this point in our operation. What this means from a financing perspective, you can see in the first column under FY 23 that under the old formula funding, there were core operations, there were contact hours, and there were student success. Under the new model, we are limited exclusively to student success. For FY25, we are going to utilize the hold harmless provision and under HB 8. And so we know that our funding is going to end up being $62,400,000 for state appropriations. That does not include the money that we get through the FAST funding program. As you can see on this slide, we have rarely increased our tuition rates. We had an increase in 2019 and in 2020, but in the last 5 years, we've held our tuition flat. This is essentially a discount to our students. As we've seen inflation increase by 20% over that same time period, holding our tuition rates flat is a significant benefit to our students, one that we tried to extend this year as well in terms of tuition and all of our fees, some of which you just voted on. You've been receiving regular updates on our enrollment growth. That is also reflected in our tuition increases. For FY23, we collected $132 million. We're projecting that our total tuition revenue collected will be $140 million before exemption and waivers, $122 million after. This is a significant growth for us beyond what we had projected, which accounts for some of the additional revenue over our budget for FY24. All of these items are coming together with a specific focus on maintaining affordability for our students, trying to address some of the needs at Coleman College, and maximizing earnings and the impact of HB 8 and FAST funding. The way that we include students in dual credit and trying to grow that program not only provides additional funding for us, which helps to make the dual credit program more financially sustainable, but they become an ideal pipeline for future students once they graduate from high school. As we compare large urban property tax at HCC to our two peers, San Jac and Lone Star, in the first box, you can see a listing of our exemptions and our rates, and you can see that we have the highest exemptions and we have the lowest rate. Essentially, if you want to live in the greater Houston area, you want to live in the HCC district, we offer the best deal on higher education for our students. In the second box, you can see the impact that it would have on taxpayers based on the amount of value of their home, and also how we compare to Lone Star and San Jac. The same home in San Jac's area will cost you twice as much in property tax as it does in the Houston area. As we look at implications for our tax revenue, home sales in the Houston area are relatively flat with some decline. However, we expect the tax base to continue to grow at a rate that we will be able to collect an additional 8% in revenue while also cutting our tax rate again in compliance with the law and in order to maximize our revenue. From tuition and fees and property tax comparison with the other large urban community colleges in the state, you can see that our tuition rates for in-district are right at the median. You'll notice there that our property tax rate is the lowest, not just among larger urban peers, but amongst all community colleges in the state of Texas. We also need to consider the future impacts of the economy on our investments. Investments have become a significant contributor to our total budget, to the tune of $20+ million a year. As you can see through July of 2024, the expectation is that rates will hold fairly flat, but we're expecting that rates will start to decline starting third quarter of calendar year 2024. This will result in lower income for us. And so we are at the peak of our earning cycle on our investments, and we need to take advantage of that one-time revenue to maximize the benefit to the college, because that money will not always be available to us from a year-over-year budget perspective. As we look at operating expenses, our largest expense is related to salaries and benefits. And what I have here on the screen is a comparison of the changes in cost of living, or the CPI rate, and then a comparison of the faculty salary increases over the last 5 years compared to the staff salaries. Through 2023, we had the same increases for faculty and staff every single year. Last year, because of market rate comparisons with our faculty, the college decided to increase salaries for faculty at a rate of 7.5% and only 4% for staff. Unfortunately, what you'll notice is that even with those increases last year, both faculty and staff are still lagging behind the increase in cost of living due to inflation. For 2025, if we use the same model that we used last year, 4% for staff and 7.5% for faculty, our faculty barely start to cross the border of keeping up with inflation, while our staff will continue to lag behind at a rate of 6% over the last 5 years, below the increase in cost of living. So as we prepare the budget for your review, one of the items that we need you to consider for approval is increasing funding to address known commitments that the college has. And I've tried to break these down into categories that are broad enough that you can understand where this money is going to go. If I could maybe offer a few explanations on how we got to a point where we need $8 million of funding to address known commitments. We have tried to increase salaries for employees over the last several years to the best of our ability to keep up with inflationary increases. We have not provided those same increases to the operating budgets across the district. And so some of these increases are for things as simple as, in our law enforcement programs, the cost of ammunition has gone up significantly. So in order to provide the same services to our students, it costs significantly more, but we haven't provided additional budget to address those significant increases. And so part of this $8 million is a catch-up to address some of the inflationary costs. There are other issues like increases in contractual agreements year over year, where it continually costs more and more. And so we have sometimes funded these with one-time dollars. What we're trying to do is to build this into the budget so that we can address these issues long-term. This would allow us to get to a point where in the future we could simply do a inflationary rate adjustment to budgets and then ask our departments to operate every year within their budgets without needing to bring these kinds of requests back for approval by the board or by administration. We have a couple of specific items. These are only two of those items that we will be discussing next month, but parking at Coleman campus, as you know, is very expensive for our students at $200 per month. That is a legitimate barrier to our students being successful in some of our healthcare programs. We would like to address that. In all likelihood, that will be between $700,000 and $1 million for us to address that in the short term. We also need to expand testing services, and we have the opportunity to build our own testing center here at 3100 to give our students more opportunities to excel and to succeed and to, again, eliminate barriers that simply are outside of their control and keep them from being successful. The changes in House Bill 8 have put far more emphasis on student success. And the way that we measure and the programs that we implement in order to be more successful in helping our students to achieve credentials of value. what we have done is, through the budgeting process, asked the various divisions to submit proposals for funding to help improve the college's performance under House Bill 8. And you can see that we had 45 requests came in that totaled $8.4 million. But we also had an additional $7.5 million of other requests that came in. The college is growing. We have more students coming in. We need more faculty. We're trying to provide more diverse educational opportunities. There are reasons why these other requests came in, and these are being vetted carefully, and you will see our recommendation in May as to how we should try to address some of these. The point of the conversation today is to show you that potentially we have the funding available to address many of these requests if we decide that that is the best use of our resources. We have 3 areas that are of significant importance on a district-wide level. First, our IT network and infrastructure needs additional funding to replace servers, to ensure that we have the backbone available to enhance the services that we provide to our students. Over the course of the next 4 years, at the tune of approximately $20 million, we believe that we could catch up and address some of these lagging IT issues that, frankly, we've only addressed on an emergency basis, right? Whatever the largest fire is each year, that's what we've tried to take care of. We need to get in front of it so that we can use that as a springboard to add the other services that we need to be more successful as an institution. Second, we have a number of safety and security issues that have come up. This is everything from training and equipment for our police officers to the doors and locks and video surveillance that we have available across our different buildings. This is a very critical need for us. Particularly as an urban institution, we have a lot of pressures on our students from a safety perspective outside of the way that they treat each other as students. And so this is a priority for us. Again, we estimate that we need approximately $20 million over the next 4 years to bring that up to the standards that we think we need as an institution. And then in terms of deferred maintenance, we have tried to allocate $10 million a year to address deferred maintenance issues. That is not enough money. With $400 million of total deferred maintenance, that's barely enough for us to basically stay on track with increases in inflationary costs and with the new issues that get added to the deferred maintenance list as our buildings continue to age. We need to be far more aggressive. In conjunction with the IT networking and safety and security, we're proposing an additional $5 million. There may be opportunities for us to allocate even more resources into deferred maintenance to expedite some of these changes as we move forward. So this is our preliminary budget outlook. And I would like to walk through some of these lines one at a time, and then we can discuss, or I can answer your questions about it later. So from a state appropriations perspective, we expect to be fairly on target with our projections for this year, with very flat changes to state appropriations for next year. This also includes fast funding as part of the state appropriations program, but the point is this is not going to be an area of growth for us in terms of revenue. From an ad valorem tax perspective, with the growth of the tax base, and with the laws that are currently in place, the most we could expect is an 8% increase in total revenue. That would be accompanied with a cut to the total tax rate in order to comply with the law. Tuition and fees we've discussed at length, but with $122 million coming in this year and only budgeting $111 million, that accounts for $11 million of our overage. We also expect that to continue to increase in the future, projecting an additional 2% increase for next fiscal year. And then our other local income, our investments, we were very conservative when we set our budget at $5.6 million. We could earn close to $30 million this year on our investments. Now, that won't hold because we expect interest rates to start to decline at the end of this year, but we still expect to be very aggressive, and we hope to have between $17 and $20 million in investment earnings for next fiscal year. So our revenue is up. If we increase our fund balance contribution for deferred maintenance to $15 million, it means our operating budget is going to be running in the $450 million range. That is $50 million more than what we budgeted this year. That provides us with numerous opportunities to address all of the problems that we've discussed today. Salaries and benefits, the line item that you see there is 7.5% for faculty, 4% for staff. If we were to increase staff compensation to 7.5% as well, that would be an additional $5 million that we would need to allocate. The $8.9 million for other non-payroll, that includes the $8.1 million that we discussed for known commitments. The $6.8 million for transfers, that's related back to the fund balance, and that's simply our accounting for how we have the money come in and go out from the fund balance to the operating budget. If you look below the line, we have HBA and other initiatives. If we have a $450 million budget, we could potentially fund $15 million of that while still covering the $10 million for IT, infrastructure, and safety and security. Those are the major categories, and those are the areas that we would like your input on. What do you think is the best use of this additional revenue? We have so many urgent needs at the institution. I don't believe that we have a revenue problem. What we have is a spending problem, right? We have been too conservative in developing our budget, and we haven't spent our money as efficiently as we could, and that has resulted in large contributions being made to the fund balance every year, with issues that need to be funded being deferred year after year after year. As part of that proposal, and as part of the feedback that we would like from you as board, we would like you to consider whether or not you would like to see a proposal for a budget amendment for FY24. We expect to be $30 million over budget this year. I'm sorry, to have $30 million in excess revenue this year. We would like to allocate some of that immediately to IT infrastructure, safety, security, deferred maintenance, and potentially to address other issues at Coleman campus, so that we can start the process to implement those changes now and utilize the budget from this year now to address some of those outstanding needs. With that said, your feedback on that and where you'd like to see those dollars allocated will be very important to us from an administrative perspective as we develop the proposals for your review in May. So, May, you'll see our proposal based on the feedback that you provide us. That will give us one more opportunity to solicit feedback and to make changes before we bring the budget to you for approval in June. So, any questions on this particular presentation?
Are there any questions, trustees? Trustee, go ahead.
I've got mainly more comments than questions, but I'll try to keep it brief. So on your general point about the conservatism of the budget, I 100% agree. I think that we've been both conservative on our expenses as well as on our revenues. And so I think it would be valuable to draw together a number of scenarios to pull into our next couple of months of deliberations. I think on the expenses side, we've talked about this before, but a much more aggressive execution of our deferred maintenance liability, probably multiple times what we're currently envisioning, is something that I'd like to see considered. Of course, that would come with an associated ramp up in staffing to ensure that we actually can spend the money that we allocate. So I'd hope that would be included in the budget. We've talked as well about aggressive expansions in programs, dual credit, otherwise, and incorporating views of what that would cost from an expense side would be very helpful to make sure, again, we understand what we're biting off as we drive toward kind of aspirational goals in terms of enrollment and credentialing of value. I also think, though, that to be realistic, it's very difficult to ramp up that level of spend in a very short period of time. So I think we need to run scenarios on the revenue side as well. I'm open to what that might look like, but a couple of ideas that come to mind is instead of assuming an 8% ad valorem tax revenue growth, have a scenario that shows 3%. Think looking at tuition cuts. I know that our tuition is currently competitive, but with us continuing to donate or transfer $20+ million a year into reserve fund, it makes sense to give some of that back to students, or to structure some kind of a Hope-style scholarship. I went to school in Georgia, so this resonates with me, that if you continue to maintain a strong GPA, you get the benefit of reduced or zeroed out tuition as an incentive to stick around. I think we need to run scenarios on all of these fronts. I think, appreciate the data that you sent earlier, but with us having 20+ million in excess revenue 4 budget cycles in a row, I think, some staring reality in the face that sometimes you just can't spend all the money that you want to spend, and we should make some adjustments to that revenue side to make sure we don't consider building up that revenue account or that fund balance. One final comment, and then I'll stop filibustering, is on the HB8 initiatives. Very excited to see the details of those. I think it would also be helpful to understand what the ROI of those might be. So again, we can include those in our aspirational vision for the next couple of years. Very excited to see what we can do to move the needle on HB8 and get out of that hold harmless territory as we get out of that 2-year look back window. But thanks. That's all my comments. No questions really, but thank you.
Other trustees, Dr. Venable Stallworth.
Oh, I want to make sure I have clarity. We have 80,000 plus head count enrollment, but that is not 80,000 plus students in class. Is that correct?
So we have 80,000 plus total head count. That includes CE, workforce, and standard student credit hour enrolled students. In terms of funding from the state, it's generally that the enrollment numbers that are used are generally limited to student credit hours. And so that's why in some presentations you'll see the 70,000. In this presentation, you'll see that our total head count is nearing 90,000.
So the total head count is not every student in class. We always use these standards and not really understanding what that really looks like. If we are to look at, we understand that our ad valorem tax base is huge. So we benefit greatly from sitting in the middle of Houston, Texas. But one of the things that's interesting to me is that we are using the state appropriations of hold harmless, while San Antonio, Alamo Colleges received, 92 million?
Approximately a 36% increase in their appropriations.
Yes, because they did not do hold harmless, and they anticipated what they would have to do to increase the number of success, the percentage of the student success rate, and they were very successful. So looking at our hold harmless at, 62 million, is that what it is? Is that where we are?
Yes.
And that 62 million was from 2021?
That's based on the 2022 figure.
So 2022, we're still focusing on 2022 numbers for a hold harmless number when a college system with only 5 colleges is significantly smaller without the same tax base outpaced us. They outpaced us. So one of the other things that's not being discussed here is we had a long conversation as a board about having a top-heavy system, and we understood that system was too top-heavy. But I am not seeing in this budget what we're going to do about that. So I want to see what the scenarios are going to be for reducing that top 1/3, because we are very top-heavy as an institution. And if you base that per student enrollment or student income, tuition and fees, it's not sustainable. We've been told that, though, that it's not sustainable for several years, but we continue to operate in the same way, even though we've been told every year it's not sustainable. I'm not comfortable with the perception of the IT, for what we have to do for IT retrofit, because
there are some things that are missing there that we absolutely need. There are some things that we need to change that we're not addressing. We know we're going to focus on dual credit and early college, high school enrollment. We have, Chancellor, what is our enrollment? 6,000, just under 6,000?
Or dual credit or?
Dual credit in early college, high school?
For the dual credit in the early college, high school, Dr. Perez, you should have that current number for all of them. But I know that based upon the budget, we're looking at roughly $14 million, as I recall, that's allocated for that. So do you have that current number? Not, I can pull it up. For dual credit, yes, in early college, high school to date. 13,000.
So we're at 13,000.
It's over 13,000 at this point. I want to say 13.8.
Okay, and Dallas Colleges is above 20,000. So we've got to catch up. And I know you all have a plan for that. So we have to look at what happens if we can catch up. So we're 8,000 short of where we could be. But that is because we have been very conservative about dual credit and early college, high school enrollment. So as a trustee, I would like to see what happens if we're going to trim this budget, reduce the top-heavy portion of this budget, increase the dual credit to 20,000 students, which is another 7,000 students, and then take an honest look at what our operations look like, in particular IT, because we have some software packages that are antiquated. We've used some of these software packages, 15, 20 years, updates every year. We've got to take another look at that. And we have probably 8 to 10 software packages we haven't used at all. We bought and parked. And so what are we going to do with that? So I'm not, I think this is a good start. But in terms of hold harmless versus actually having students who are matriculating into the four-year systems, students who are receiving the credentials of value, dual credit, early college, high school students. I think that those areas of fiscal responsibility we can increase. And this team is very good at that. And I've seen how good they can be. So I certainly expect to see that. But I definitely want to see this top 1/3 reduced, because I think that it is very top heavy compared to our competitors or our collaborators, or however you want to call out other community colleges. We are very top heavy in comparison to them. So what are we going to do with that? And I'd certainly like to see us catch up with Alamo Colleges at $92 million instead of $62 million hold harmless. I'd really like to see that. Thank you.
The Chancellor wants to make a comment, and then Trustee Wilson, you may speak.
Thank you so very, very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask for Mr. Jacob Atkins to indicate just exactly what that break-even point is for dual credit in early college, high school, because we had discussed that, and I know that we get the dollars from the state for the dual credit in early college, high school students, but we also advance the tuition and fee waivers as well. And so can you give us a synopsized view of what that looks like in terms of the revenue?
So for the past 2 years, prior to the implementation of FAST funding, the college was supplementing dual credit between $1.5 and $2.5 million per year. In other words, if we looked at all of the costs associated with providing dual credit versus the revenue that we got from the state, plus any plus any fees or charges that the students paid, we were operating at a deficit. With the implementation of HB 8, the amount of money that we get from the state through state appropriations has gone down, but the amount of money that we receive from FAST funding has gone up under the current funding model. Now, as we add an additional 8,000 students, if our goal is to hit 20,000 for dual credit, that's going to generate a lot of expenses for us in terms of faculty and support costs. Hopefully we can address some of that with additional funding through the state as those students complete 15 credit hours during their tenure in high school. And about 65% of our students qualify for FAST, so we should get some additional funding there. That may be enough for us to hold the line and to stay at a break-even point as we add those. But as long as we're waiving tuition and fees for dual credit, that will continue to be a program that we have to watch very closely in terms of managing it at a break-even point financially.
You know, what you said initially about this board needs to decide what they want to look this college to look like, and the mission, and what we consider our priorities, and where we want to spend our money, and what we want to get back in return from the money we spent. And I think you've given us a kind of a starting block. Out of the starting block budget, we can look at things. And you know, one of the things that I'd always was deferred maintenance. I felt like we were constantly deficient on deferred maintenance for the last 10 years, and there is a lot of catching up. But you know, maybe we shouldn't have built so many buildings and had so many assets that we've got so much deferred maintenance. And this is, Mr. Atkins, this is your first, I guess, presentation on the budget to the board. It's honeymoon time, but next month it's over.
Duly noted.
Any other questions? Well, I just want to make a comment to the trustees. First, I want to say thank you for the presentation. But trustees, all your questions, would you please put them in an email and send them to him? So when June comes, we will have all the information, and we won't be going back and forth with what we wish we would have heard or what we wish was in the budget. We'll have all that together, and you could work on that and, you know, and get it back to us. And maybe it won't be many questions or complaints.
Ideally, yes, we'll be able to incorporate and consider all of the feedback that we get. Funds will always be limited. They're always limited here at HCC. They're limited at every institution of higher education. We will do the best that we can to incorporate the feedback and to make recommendations that we think will provide the highest return on investment for the money that we're allocating next fiscal year.
That's right, because I have about 5 or 6 questions, but I'm going to put it in email form because I know with us talking here today, all of that is not going to register. So something will be missed. So I'm just going to reiterate this. Make sure you send the questions through board services. Trustee Reichard, do you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, now I can. I couldn't at first. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, I just want to talk a little bit about what I need to see as a trustee in order to pass a budget. In the past 6 months, there has been a marked decrease in the amount of information generally I am getting as a trustee. If I'm going to make decisions about whether to put money into Coleman, I need information about how Coleman is doing, how Coleman's programs are doing, where the needs are in that. We used to get regular reports on all of our programs, assessments of what's working, what's not working, and I have just been in a black hole. I haven't seen any of that. So I need to see if Coleman is where the priority is. I need to know how Coleman has been doing recently and where the money will be going in the future if we do decide to allocate more money to Coleman. The same sort of thing with regard to if we're going to have to choose among deferred maintenance or IT. I need to have some sort of sense of what that money and what that expenditure is going to look like, where those priorities are going to be and where those goals are. So that is what, I don't have nearly enough information right now to make a decision on this budget.
I'm shocked at how little information I have been receiving, just no reports or anything like that. So if you could help remedy that by the next budget workshop, I'd appreciate it.
Trustee Reichert, we understand your concerns, and could you put it in email through board services and express all your concerns so we can make sure that your concerns are addressed? Is that okay? Is it fair enough?
Yes.
Because, I don't want him to miss anything that you're concerned about. And right now, standing here talking, he probably won't remember everything you addressed, but if you put it in an email, send it through board services, he can address your concerns. We'll make sure your concerns are addressed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, trustees? No other questions? Okay. Just a reminder, send all your suggestions or questions to through board services as soon as possible, so they won't be, they won't be overwhelmed with trying to get responses to us. Okay? All right.
Thank you, Ms. Atkin.
Thank you so much. We will now move to item D, update of the strategic plan. This is also a report item. No action is required. Dr. Ford Fisher will present the item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item is a draft of the strategic plan to include a streamlined version of the plan for board feedback and ultimate future use and distribution. With your permission, Madam Chair, I invite Dr. Burridge to the podium to present the report.
Okay, oh, perfect. So thank you, Chancellor, Madam Chair, and Board. Today I present to you a draft of a streamlined strategic plan. It is a summary that is designed to be posted. Essentially, this plan is consistent with what is typically posted by colleges. It focuses on the core of the current strategic plan, which is HCC's mission, its vision, its values, and its strategic priorities. It is essentially an abridged version of the longer document that is designed to be informative and compliant with SAC's COC accreditation and also with Senate Bill 17. This abridged plan also is designed to provide a basis for ongoing work designed to focus the college on student success and student outcomes. So the strategic plan was written with guidance from the Board of Trustees as a 10-year document. It was designed to be a series of three-year sprints. At this point, we have completed the first 3-year sprint. So at the second 3-year sprint, that is a time that we reflect on the strategic plan and we move forward. The transition between the sprints should be informed by the Board of Trustees, the leadership, the faculty, staff, and the stakeholders. This document forms the basis to begin that sprint, and the process has begun in accordance with Regulation BGC. As part of their work for FY24, the Institutional Effectiveness Council reviews the current strategic plan, the benchmarks, and the progress made in the last 3 years to start a process of focusing us on the next sprint. It's important that the college, the community, the students, faculty, and staff, and definitely with guidance of the board, all be involved as we move to the next sprint. And so we submit this draft for you as an abridged version of the first 3 years, designed to move the conversation forward as we begin the planning for our next 3 years. It's submitted as an item for discussion because it's an abridged plan. It is a summary of what has already been approved.
Are there any questions, trustees? No questions?
What kind of tennis shoes do we need for the next sprint?
Hopefully really good ones, because we are going to be working hard for our students.
Okay, so remember that. You need a pair of Nikes. Trustee Cheeman?
Yeah, so again, thank you for pulling this information together. It was a really informative read. As I was reading through it, though, I felt like there was a first step missing, and that was those tangible student outcomes that we're seeking to deliver and commit to the community with all of these kind of strategic steps and focus areas supporting them. And I think we've talked about some of those in passing over the last couple of hours. But I think without those clear commitments to the community and to ourselves, this document doesn't do a lot for me, honestly. And before something like this was published, I would rather see those clear commitments in here, in a SMART format, the all caps acronym SMART, not,
Yeah.
so that, again, the community knows what we intend to deliver, when we intend to deliver it, and how it's going to impact, individual communities and the Houston economy writ large. I just think without that, this feels more fluffy than a document that's this condensed should be, so.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It is consistent with the type of information published, but I also hear you, because I think that's exactly what the IEC is working on presenting right now. They're really focusing on our first priority, student success, and on access, quality, and care, to think about how we're going to prioritize student success and what that would mean for our focus. The issues that we have, and it is not published as of this point, the issues that we have we have a couple of choices. We can publish the entire strategic plan, which is the 138 pages, or we can publish a shorter version in the meantime while we really work on fine-tuning the document. So.
I guess follow-up question, is there an urgency to publish the document until we do that refinement work and can put those tangible commitments into the condensed version?
For accreditation, we really do need to have a version out there with our strategic priorities and our goals, so we do need to put something out there. So, yes.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah. Can I say one more thing? And we also are really committed to, as we move forward, getting the feedback from the board. So we were really hesitant to put anything that was a big change out there without your feedback and guidance.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you so very much for that. Okay, Chancellor, you want to say something?
Well, I want to thank Dr. Burge and the team, because this was a voluminous document that was developed, and there have been questions from the board about how we condense the document. And so we've had 2 retreats where we developed the SMART goals, and those SMART goals were then refined to the point where we then are presenting the document that you see here. And so, as was indicated, SACS does require that we have our goals, our objectives, and our metrics there. So, as I understand it, parts of the strategic plan were approved previously. And so this is to bring back the refined piece of it, and we know that we can refine it even more. But the previous plan, that voluminous document, did not include the full scope of the views of the board. And that's something that we recognized, and that is something that will be corrected. So thank you for raising that.
That's truly appreciated.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Burge. Thank you.
No further questions? So am I correct in saying the meeting of the Committee of the Whole is adjourned at?
5:06 p.m.
Is that true? Am I dreaming? Well, thank you, everyone.